Y'all ready? Okay. Good evening. I'm calling this meeting of the Barrington Town Council to order. All members of the council are present this evening. I would ask that Pack 1 please come forward for us. I understand you gentlemen are going to recite the oath for us. Go ahead.
On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to guard my country and to obey its scout law, to help other people at all times, and keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight.
That's great. Now, I'd ask everybody else to stand, please rise, and they will lead us in the pledge. Face the flag, guys. Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good job, guys. Thank you to Pack 1. Next on our agenda is announcements, and I would ask our town manager, Jim Cunha, to take us through those, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. As most of you are probably aware, the East Bay bike path bridges over the Palmer River and the Barrington River were closed effective November 1st. Rhode Island DOT is putting out a design-build contract that hopefully will be out this fall to be awarded before the construction season begins next year. It's anticipated that there's $10 million allocated toward the project, and it's anticipated that it'll be a two-season project, so we would expect the bike paths to be open in the spring of 2022. So, in the meantime, there are routes, detour signs that will take you along the sidewalk and over the Route 114 bridges. We ask that people please walk their bikes because of the narrowness of the sidewalks. We don't want a collision between two bicyclists. As of Wednesday, at the Walker Farm will open up for leaf disposal, yard waste disposal. It will be open daily, Monday through Friday, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. On this Thursday at 9 o'clock, there will be a meeting of the Barrington Community Support Coalition. That's the group that put together Barrington Day of Caring on Columbus Day. That meeting will be held at 9 a.m. at the Bay Spring Community Center. Monday, November 11th, is Veterans Day, and at 11 a.m. Here at Town Hall, at the flagpole, there'll be a short veteran ceremony with a guest speaker. On Wednesday, November 13th, at 7 p.m., here in Council Chamber, will be a discussion, a public forum on Lot 3A on George Street. That's that property that the town purchased at the FTM back in May. And there's going to be some discussions about what options are available for us to utilize that property. And on Thursday, November 28th, and Friday, November 29th, is Thanksgiving weekend. The Thursday and Friday Thanksgiving weekend, and all town offices will be closed. And finally, on Saturday, December 7th, will be our annual Barrington Glows celebration here at Town Hall, with from 2 to 5:30 with the tree lighting at 5 p.m. And that's on Saturday, December 7th. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. The next series of items on our agenda are what we call the consent agenda. These are usually matters that are routine and non-controversial. There won't be a separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, and the request is for good cause, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Does anyone on the council have anything that they would like to remove from the consent agenda? I would like to remove item 10, which is acknowledgement of correspondence.
I'd like to remove item 5, and then from 7, the finance, police, and planning reports, and items 12 through 15.
Which reports are those? Finance? Police?
Finance, police, and planning.
Okay. And then 11 through 15?
12 through 15.
12 through 15. Anyone else? Would anyone from the audience like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the exception of items 5, 7, 10, and 12 through 15.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 5, the Councillor Breyer.
I'd just like to abstain from that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't need discussion.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the reappointments to the boards and commissions as presented?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention. Motion carries. Next item is item 7, and Councillor Breyer, the Finance Director's report.
Yep. So for the finance report, we had discussed in the past if it was feasible, if the data had been kept to include the year-over-year data on those reports. I know Kathy was at conferences the prior meetings, so I just wanted to resurface that to see if we can get that included in subsequent reports.
Okay.
My only question is specifically, what are you asking for year over year?
So the if a year-to-date column for the prior year can be included.
Okay. Kathy, is that possible?
Oh. Whichever is easier to provide, either way is fine.
Thank you. Next, the police report.
For that, I had noticed that probably in the past, the monthly reports weren't locked into a month. It was kind of a month-long period, but now that we're going to be looking at comparative data, seeing that going forward it was going to be locked in. I just wanted to call that out and say that I appreciate focusing in on that so that going forward we can have that comparative data. It's helpful. That was it on that one.
Okay, and then you mentioned the planner's report.
The planning report, I was curious in looking at that year-over-year data that I find very helpful. The total fees collected on permits. Total permits are up about 50%, but the total increase in revenue in permits is about 5 times the increase. And I was just wondering if we have a sense of whether that's purely due to the bringing the fees to market rate, or if it's also because larger projects or projects that are different in scope are happening this year as compared to last year.
Phil?
I'll have to get that to you separately. I don't have that information. I'll research it for next month's monthly report.
Okay.
That's okay?
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else on that report?
No, that's it.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the monthly department reports?
So moved?
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. I ask that item 10 be removed, only to note that we all got, each of us got 2 additional emails today, and I just want them to be included in the correspondence. So unless anyone has an objection, I'd ask for a motion to acknowledge the correspondence, including the 2 emails that we received today.
So moved.
Second?
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Now, Councilor Breyer, you had a question about items 12 through 15.
Yes. It seems they all had a slightly different format, but it seems that this is all a single issue that I was making some assumptions in reading through those and just thought having some general background on it might be helpful in understanding what the situation is and what our action to refer it to interlocal trust means.
It's a legal matter, so I'll speak in broad terms. But basically, it's some property homes that were constructed, a plat of 10 homes, and there were some concerns about some of the things that were not done during the construction that should have been done. The suits are against the builder and the town. The accusation against the town is that the building inspector did not fulfill his duties in inspecting. We've discussed this previously with the prior building inspector, and he was tracking everything just as he should. So, but we'll have to let it play out. The reason we give it to the interlocal trust is because they are insured.
Okay, so it's giving to them to advise us in how they think it should be.
No, it's an insurance matter, so this is like making a claim on your homeowner's insurance, but
Okay.
it's our insurance.
All right, got it. I'll move to refer the 4 notices.
Is there a second? Second. Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the Bristol County Water Authority monthly report. Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. I think the bottom of my report, which was written last week, pretty much projects what's happened. The project has been completed, it's connected, and now the situation is to be disinfected. Once that occurs, which has to then have the approval of the Department of Health, then we'll just turn the valves, stop the water coming to us from East Providence, and you'll be using the water directly from our pipeline. There were some real questions that some of the members had, me included, about the surety of this process working, but in fact, it happened all perfectly as planned. So we're happy to see that that went through. How to spend $3.4 million in a matter of a few weeks.
Right. So what's the projected timeline on Department of Health approval?
I don't have that yet. I'm not sure exactly when they're going to start. They were supposedly to start the disinfection this week. That's a process I'm not familiar with in terms of where they're going to do with the water, how long it will take. Once they clear the pipeline, it's not the outside, it's only the part inside the new pipe that has to be cleared. So the rest of the water still stays in there.
Right.
That seeped in around it inside the original pipeline, between that and the new slip lining. Once that's the new water, if the new pipe water is disinfected, then it will be tested. The test will satisfy the Department of Health, and we should be able to make the switch.
That's great. Okay.
Any other questions? Most of the other stuff was routine matters, just keeping you abreast of what's going on.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on interviews and appointments. Is Annalise Conway here? Ms. Conway.
Hello.
Hi, please come forward. Can you tell us a little about yourself and what you hope to bring to the Housing Board of Trustees?
Yes, I'd love to. So I am a new resident of Barrington as of this year in May. We moved from North Carolina and looking to volunteer my time in some element of public service that aligns with my interest in social change and my background in nonprofit management and communications and marketing. So thought this was a good opportunity for me to put all of those together. I've done a lot of work with annual reports and have a background in auditing as well. So
That's great.
looked at that and said, that's the right place for me.
Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Great. Well, thank you very much. We'll be voting in just a minute. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Do I hear a motion to appoint Annalise Conway?
I'll make a motion to appoint Annalise Conway to the Housing Board of Trustees.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on the minutes of the Town Council meeting from September 9th, 2019. Before we kind of get into this, I'm just going to make a suggestion. First of all, I understand that our town clerk has recently attended a seminar of some kind that has talked about the appropriate way to do minutes, and we're going to be reducing the description in the minutes down. Right now, it's sort of a summary of what we're doing. Technically, all we need to do is to say discussion ensued, and then a vote and who voted. Especially where we have a video record of all of our meetings, it's very simple for anyone who is curious about a particular item to go and look at the video and see exactly what happened. So that's just generally, and then specifically, my view is we kind of worked down to one section I thought of the minutes. My suggestion would be that we just delete everything after discussion ensued, which would begin, Mr. Breyer requested the following changes to, and then those bullets, everything up to the motion. Would that be acceptable to you, Councilor Breyer?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, because I didn't make those specific requests.
Okay. So with that change, is there any other change to the September minutes? With that modification, do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes of the Town Council meeting on September 9th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to Sure. Please come forward.
Ann Strong, 55 Teat Avenue. It's great that we have the videos. The videos are not up in a timely manner. The minutes are, the paper is what's going to endure. When someone is in the year 2062, when we're, probably not arguing with each other at town council meetings any longer, it's the paper pieces are what's going to endure, and the more detail that is on the paper, I feel is better. I go back. I was looking through minutes this week from the early 90s regarding something that's going to be coming up on the agenda, and I just hate to see that record that has been so robust, and that record and the minute writing is an art, right? So the best minute writer that Barrington, in my mind, has ever had was Sally Small. And things that the town council did that were wrong were caught in her minutes, in the minutes of the Cemetery Commission. And I think you are doing future generations a horrible disservice by putting discussion ensued. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the minutes from the Town Council meeting of October 7, 2019. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns about those?
I wanted to note that the reports that I had sent, or the suggested reports that I had sent, are included in these minutes, and they're not really appropriate in these minutes because they were in relation to the discussion that we had at the September meeting. And I think they ended up in here because when we were discussing during the October meeting about the minutes from the September meeting, the comment to include them was made, but it was including them in September. I don't think that they need to be included anywhere, but to me they seemed out of place in this. And then I don't know if we want, there's one other thing unrelated to that I want to discuss, so we
was there a specific request that we attach those minutes to those documents to the minutes?
Well, while we were discussing last meeting, the minutes from the September meeting, the reference to that I had shared reports in advance was made. I don't remember if I brought it up or if you brought it up, but then we said, well, couldn't we include those reports in the minutes? And I think that's how they ended up in the October minutes. Whether they are or aren't included, I don't think is all that material. Okay. But so I'm fine just removing them from October, not putting them anywhere else, especially because we just voted to approve the September minutes. They just, to me, seemed out of place in October because we didn't actually discuss the reports in October. We just discussed the discussion of the reports.
Okay. I don't remember a specific request to attach them, so unless there was there a request that we attach them?
No, there was no request to attach the sheet in September, but we did mention it in October.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't have a problem with taking it off unless anyone else does. So we can just take those off. And then you had another?
Yes, so the motion to leave executive session and report the vote that was taken during executive session all seems to be grouped into a single motion.
So there were no votes taken. If I'm looking at the I'm looking at the wrong minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that always, it's right there. Oh, we've done it?
Peter, should we do that as two separate items? There was a motion to move out of, thank you, out of executive session, which frankly I can't remember. I'm assuming that was unanimous. I don't think anyone wanted to stay in executive session. Right, and then there was a motion during executive session which passed 4-1 to 0. We should separate those into two separate items, right?
I think that's appropriate since, as you said, the vote is probably unanimous to move out, but not always unanimous on what was actually voted on. So okay. I think it would be clearer if that was separated.
Yeah, to me, the reading of this seems as though the vote that's being reported is the vote to leave executive session, because that's how the motion starts.
Yep.
And so there should be that unanimous vote.
Yeah.
Especially given that I seconded the motion and then voted against. Okay,
so Mary, can we split this up so it says Mr. Boyajian and seconded by Mr. Breyer moved out of executive session at 10:41. The vote was unanimous to move out of executive session. A vote was taken during executive session. And I don't know if you have who made the motion and who seconded it.
The second vote, like, in which there was a vote taken in executive session?
Yeah. I'm going to
I do.
suggest that we table this and just do it at the next meeting, because if you want to check your notes, and we'll fix that.
Yeah, so you want to split that, end with a unanimous vote was taken to move out of executive session, and then where a vote was taken inside executive session, you want me to put...
Who made the initial...
Who made those votes?
Right, the motion. We have the way people voted.
I can technically find out right now. Let's see. So that vote that was inside executive session was made by Mr. Carroll and seconded by Mrs. Wayman.
Okay. With that change, and then reflecting the votes, the other votes there, and removing the attachments from these minutes, do I hear a motion to adopt the minutes of the October 7 meeting?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And no abstentions. The motion carries. Thank you. The next item is a presentation on our Day of Caring. This is from on tree reform from our Girl Scouts Silver Award Project person, Emma Marvilli. Is Emma?
Good evening.
Go ahead, please.
My name is Denise House. I'm the director of the Barrington Prevention Coalition, and I was also on the planning committee for the second annual Day of Caring. A couple of months ago, I had a young lady come to me. She wanted to do a project in connection with the Day of Caring, and we were very happy to support this project and support her, and I'm going to let her tell you specifically about the project. I'm hoping this moves over here. Is it long enough? Whoop.
As far as it'll go.
Is that as long as it goes?
That won't move because of that HDMI.
That's okay. Okay.
I am the Lorax, and I speak for the trees. My name is Emma Marvelli. I'm a freshman at BHS, and I'm a cadet in Girl Scouts. That quote from before is from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. As many of you may or may not know, that book is about deforestation and realizing that people have created a problem, become aware of the problem, ignored the problem, and then fixed the problem. You may be asking, so what's the point? Well, I had to complete a project for my Girl Scout Silver Award, and for this award you had to put in 50 hours to create something that benefits your community for a lasting amount of time. For my project, I, in correlation with the Day of Caring, planted trees around Wood Pond in hopes to spread awareness of the effects of deforestation. My objectives were to connect to the Day of Caring, plant trees on the Day of Caring, which is October 14th, Columbus Day, get all trees and materials donated, and present to Town Council. Those are some pictures. Throughout this journey, I got to meet and work with some extraordinary people. First being Denise Alves, who served as my mentor and project advisor. She then connected me with Mr. Cunha, the town manager, and John Requina from the DPW, who granted me approvals for this project. Next was Frank Charette, the town arborist, who guided us as to where we could plant the trees, as well as helped us to plant the trees. Lastly, I had my individual team, who were my two friends, Sophia DeFonte and Grace Rakeman, the Colaccio family, and as well as my mom and my dad. For this project, I reached out to a few businesses for donations. Redwood Nursery and Garden Center donated 4 trees. Seekonk Lowe's donated 1 evergreen and a bag of soil. And Seekonk Home Depot donated 2 trees, 2 mums, 3 shovels, 6 gloves, 2 bags of peat moss, 1 bag of mulch, and 1 bag of soil. I'm very grateful for all these donations because after all, you can't plant trees without shovels. Now, I'd like to show you a little video collage I put together in which has some pictures and videos from this journey, as well as some awesome background music. Enjoy. It's going to take a few minutes to get the video up, but for now. So there's a quote in the video that says, "Individually we are one drop, however, together we can make an ocean." This stands true for conquering deforestation. Let's face it, planting a few trees in the middle of a pretty eco-friendly town isn't going to do much to help the planet. What this quote is saying is that we need to bond together to make the world a better place. Think about what happens in the book The Lorax, the foggy skies and the dark black water. In my bio honors class, we were learning about how everything connects to something else. About how when we cut down trees or burn trees, we are allowing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which affects the balance of greenhouse gases that our Earth houses. Think about what we are doing to contribute to the problem. Now think about what we can do to fix the problem. In life, we shouldn't run away from our problems. We should tackle them head on like a football player lead blocks another to let the runner run into the end zone. Thank you so much to all the people who guided me to be here today, as well as all of you for taking your time to listen to me talk about deforestation. And remember, think about what we are doing to... Sorry. Okay. We are doing to contribute to the problem and try to make it so it happens. to the thank you. Thank you so much to all the people who guided me to be here today, as well as all of you for taking your time to listen to me talk about deforestation. And remember, think about what we are doing to contribute to the problem, and try to make it so what happens in the Lorax doesn't happen in our reality today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, if I may suggest, since we had a little audiovisual problem, if Emma would forward me that, we'll get it posted on a town website.
Well, that'd be
so
great.
we can get some views.
Yeah. So, Emma, I don't know if, Emma, I'm not sure if you heard our town manager, but if you can forward that video, we can post it on our website.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the re-accreditation presentation for the Barrington Police Department. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. I'm delighted to have Christine Crocker here this evening. She's the Executive Director of the Police Accreditation Commission in Rhode Island. She retired from Cumberland Police Department as a captain back in 2009. And in 2012, there was an initiative by the Police Chiefs Association to establish a state accreditation commission in hopes to have every department in the state of Rhode Island awarded with accreditation status. We were lucky enough in 2016 to get our first accreditation status in the fall. It's a 3-year commitment. Every 3 years you're reassessed. It's not that it ends over the 3 years, but it's a 3-year review. They review all 3 years, and the next time we just was up for a reassessment this fall, and to our delight, we passed. So she's here tonight to present the police department with reaccreditation status. It's important in many ways, obviously, not only from an insurance standpoint. I think the council knows. We've talked about it a couple of times. I've mentioned it in some of my monthly reports in the past. Those departments that are insured through the Rhode Island Municipal Interlocal Trust that are not accredited, have not received accreditation status, their deductibles substantially increased. For a department our size, would have went from $2,500 per incident to $50,000 per incident. So it's like a 20-fold increase. Among other things, there's over 200 standards you have to meet. And like I said, there's still quite a bit of departments in the state that haven't even reached their first. So I'm proud that the Barrington Police have met that. And also present tonight, a few of our officers, Lieutenant and Captain here, and Lieutenant Josh Burrell and Detective John Scagliatici here. They're the ones who are our most recent accreditation managers and had a lot to do with the success, along with everyone in the department, because you can't, they're the managers, but it takes everyone to, it's a crazy amount of reporting, documentation, and proofs that are involved. And without any further, I'll let Christine, she can probably explain a little more than I can. She's very familiar with state and national accreditation when she was with Cumberland PD. Christine?
Chief. Good evening. It's quite a pleasure for me to be here for the second time to award the Barrington Police Department with the recognition of accreditation. I apologize having my back to everyone. Accreditation is no easy task. It is a lot of work, but anything worth having requires dedication, commitment, and hard work. Getting reaccredited is even harder because the first time around you prove that you can talk the talk, and when we come back, show us that you walk the walk. And you should be very proud of this department. They had an excellent reaccreditation assessment. And we have agencies that are struggling still to get accredited. So they are committed. They want to provide the tools, the guidelines necessary for their employees to make good, sound decisions, and even more importantly, to provide the best services to the residents of the town of Barrington. So, Chief, if you can come up, I'll present you with your reaccreditation award. And I'd like to acknowledge Lieutenant Josh Burrell, who was the accreditation manager who led the charge on their initial accreditation, and Detective Scagliati, who picked up halfway through this assessment. And again, their hard work, they had a successful assessment, but like the chief said, it's a team effort. They're the managers. They guide the agency to what they need to do, but it's the leadership of the chief and his command staff and the commitment of the men and women of this department that have brought us here tonight. So, Chief, on behalf of the Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, be it hereby known that the Barrington Police Department has voluntarily complied with the required standards as set forth by the Commission and is hereby awarded this certificate of reaccreditation effective this 4th day of November 2019, and hereby shall be recognized as an accredited agency for a period of 3 years. As I'm sure Lieutenant Burrell can attest, 3 years comes around real fast, doesn't it? Congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you very much. Before we move off of that, just for folks who might not be aware of it, might not have heard the chief when he said that, we have a deductible for our insurance, which means if there's a claim made against our police department, our deductible is $2,500. If we did not have accreditation, our deductible would be $50,000. Which gives you an idea of just one way in which that's helpful. Obviously, it just improves the professionalism of the force, but it also makes a difference in terms of costs for us. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing. I'm opening the public hearing to discuss and act on our liquor license renewals. The first is Class A retail. The first item is the Class A retail license for grapes and grains. We don't need anyone to make a presentation, but anyone who wants to could be heard on that. Does anyone from the audience want to be heard? Does anyone from the council have anything to say about that? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the grapes and grains Class A retail license?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item, the next Class A retail license is Brickyard Wine and Spirits, LLC. Anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class A retail license to Brickyard Wine and Spirits?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Just the reason we say approve but not issue, they need to make sure they get their paperwork in. Once that's done, administratively, that could be issued. Next item in the public hearing is for a Class D full license to the American Legion Post 8. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class D full license for American Legion Post 8 Incorporated?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, Class D full license is Barrington Democratic Club. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Barrington Democratic Club Class D full license?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the Barrington Yacht Club. Does anyone want to be heard on that license? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class D full license to the Barrington Yacht Club?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item is the Class D full license for the Rhode Island Country Club. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Seeing no one, anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Rhode Island Country Club Class D full license?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the Class BV full license, and the first one is Tyler Point Incorporated. Anyone want to be heard on that? Seeing no one, anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class BV full license to Tyler Point Incorporated?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next one for the Class BV full license is Florian's LLC, DBA Billy's Restaurant. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve the Class BV full license but not issue it to Florian's LLC?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next Class BV full license is Stock Food Group, DBA East Bay Oyster Bar. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve the Class BV full license but not issue it to Stock Food Group, DBA East Bay Oyster Bar?
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The next BV full license is Key Ari LLC, doing business as Tong D. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Key Ari LLC, doing business as Tong D, Class BV full license?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next one is a Class BV full for Table LLC. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class BV full license to Table LLC?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next one is New Sushi Express, Inc. That's for a Class BV full license. Would anyone like to be heard on that? That's doing business as Miku. Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class BV full license to New Sushi Express, Inc., doing business as Miku Japanese Cuisine?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next series are Class BVL limited licenses. The first one is Pepperoni's LLC, doing business as Pizzoni's Pizza. Would anyone like to be heard on that? Anyone from the council? Do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class BVL limited license to Pepperoni's LLC?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next one is Leon's Kitchen Works, LLC, DBA Leon's Cafe and Catering. That's for a BVL license. Anyone want to be heard on that? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve but not issue the Class BVL limited license to Leon's Kitchen Works, LLC?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And finally, the last one is a Class BVL limited license for J&A Restaurant Enterprises Limited, doing business as Nacho Mamas. Does anyone want to be heard on that? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve but not issue the BVL limited license to J&A Restaurant Enterprises, doing business as Nacho Mamas?
So moved.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'm closing the public hearing. Fortunately, we only have to do that once a year. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This is an agenda for members of the public to speak regarding a topic that's not already on the agenda, or sometimes a topic that is already on the agenda. Please indicate you'd like to speak by raising your hand. When recognized, please approach the microphone in front of the council and state your name and address for the record. I would ask, yes, please come forward. That's a good question. I'm going to suggest that we not do so, so you might as well, but we're not to that yet, so you might as well come up now and do it.
Gary Morse, 2 Westwood Lane. I'd like to bring to the council's attention this issue that has been in the papers for quite a long time about the state of assessment, and it's been on one focused issue, the assessing houses on the price that they paid. But there's a larger systemic issue that I've noticed. I was on the original lawsuit against the town, the BET lawsuit, and I was on the steering committee, so I'm very familiar with that. And the settlement agreement that fell out of that lawsuit was that there would be standards in the town, standards that would be adopted and would be followed long term. But it seems like we've gotten away from those standards, and we're now sort of running the assessor's office in sort of a willy-nilly manner. And I have a couple of examples that go beyond the one that has been written about, the valuation based on what you paid for the house. I personally, in the last statistical revaluation, found that what was approved as an assessing method was for the Northeast Reval people to drive around in cars and, based on what they saw on the outside of the house, make upgrades to the interior without even going in. I fell into that trap, and I was forced to have a full revaluation done on my home, apart from the rest of the town of Barrington, during a statistical revaluation. And I communicated with the town manager on that, and I worked with Rich Nagel. The point was I was forced to have a full revaluation during a statistical revaluation. There are other issues, land tables. I've communicated with Mr. Cunha on that as well. There seems to be, when land tables are appropriate, they're used and enforced. But the town often is taking liberty with not following any criteria for land tables and just putting arbitrary assessments on land. This happened in 100 Acre Cove. I won't cite the properties, but they are not following any statistical or any land tables consistent with what the statutes actually require for land tables. And there's one last point that I want to bring out. The assessor has made a strong point about that this is his prerogative to assess based on immediate sales data for a given year, and he's made a point of that. But I want to point out that he's not using that same standard universally throughout the town. What he's done in Walker Farm, for example, Rhode Island Housing reassesses the selling price on those houses once every year. And he's doing it not consistent with what Rhode Island Housing is doing. And we have a sale, I don't want to point out the sale, but we have a sale going on in Walker Farm right now. And its sale price, as affirmed by Rhode Island Housing, I did do a records request and they confirmed that they approved the selling price. And the valuation price in the town records is over 10% below that. And from, you know, if we're going to be using immediate sales data or immediate data in order to do these assessments, then they really need to be doing it consistently across the whole town, and that includes using the data from Rhode Island Housing. So I think we have a larger systemic problem of, and I go back to the original lawsuit in 2010, we need to get back to standards, I guess, and enforceable standards, and that doesn't seem to be done. We're just traveling away from any kind of standards in the assessing office. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Charlie Payne, 43 Chapin Road. Mr. President, and Council, as you know, I'm here to talk about the present tax issue. And there are a lot of people here tonight who have probably never even been to a town council meeting. So I'm going to keep it brief because I know there are a lot of people that want to speak tonight to that issue. All I want to say is that for me, this is not about the money. It's about the principle of the thing. And I've stood here several times and talked to you, and I've written a lot about it. And it's easy to think it's about the money, but it's not. In a democratic society, we have an expectation that our government will treat us fairly. We want confidence in our government that it will not make arbitrary tax rules, that it will not make rules in secret, and that when we do have a rogue rulemaker, that our elected representatives will not just stick their heads in the sand. That's a big deal for me. On the other hand, sometimes I wonder, why do we even bother? This tax issue does not affect me directly. Is the principle alone enough to justify the energy and resources it costs us to stand up against a crazy new tax rule? Well, I'll tell you, when I hear the stories of folks who scrape together enough money for a mortgage in order to move to Barrington where they can raise their kids and feel safe, and then I hear their astonishment that they felt when they got hit with a ridiculous new tax ripoff, out of the blue, without warning, and without any rational purpose. And then I hear how they were treated when they went down to town hall for the very first time and were treated like with dismissiveness and rudeness. Rudeness and dismissiveness is never okay from a public servant, Mr. Minardi.
You should address the chair.
I am. Thank you. But I want to say a few things. There are a few folks here that I know want to talk about this. And I want to encourage everybody, even though it may seem redundant, to come up here and say what you need to say, because I know the town council wants to hear from every single one of you. Please take time to do that. Then, members of the council, we want to hear from each of you individually. We want to hear from you how you feel. We do not want to hear collective group speak about how you can't help us. We want you to develop a plan tonight whereby we all work together to make Barrington a better town, where our local government has predictability, openness, and integrity. You're the leaders, but we want to help. Thank you.
Yes, sir, please.
Good evening. James Hall, 199 West Seeker Avenue. I'd like to echo some of what Charlie said. My understanding is Rhode Island general law requires a fair, uniform valuation practice amongst its cities and towns. Clearly, that's not what's happening. We are a returning resident to Barrington out of need. The assessment practice as it stands right now is the 2018 home buyers got assessed at the sale price. The rest of the town got assessed at appraised value based on the last assessment. That is not fair or equitable. In fact, it's somewhat arbitrary on the part of the tax assessor. In addition, I think the council needs to take stock in this because, as Charlie said just a minute ago, most of the people who moved to this town for the education system. A good economy is built on land, labor, capital, climate, cost, culture. Where Barrington exceeds is education, climate, and culture. What you've done, or what he's doing, is he's making it unattractive for people to move to this town because even if they were aware that as a new home buyer they're going to be assessed at the sale price, they're going to stay away from it. Common practice, I was in the town for 20 plus years before we moved out and had to move back, okay? And I'm delighted to be back, all right? But common practice was assessed values based on appraisals with typically 60 to 80% of selling price. Now all of a sudden things have changed and it's based on, the most recent sale price applied unfairly to those new home buyers. If you want to continue the exceptional brand that you have in this town as a great provider for education, you're going to steer people away. And the long-term consequence could be you're going to have an upside-down home market. People who are starting to have a valuation based on a sale price when the assessed value, which is higher than their assessed value, is higher than their fair market value, okay, are going to stay away from the town. And you're going to look like other cities in town who are upside down. And you know as many of those in Rhode Island as I do. So I would strongly urge you to, get this tax assessor's office to apply this uniformly. Because what he's doing right now is completely unfair. And for the 400 home purchases in 2018, most of the ones who were affected were the lower demographic buyers. The ones who made out, I'm not discriminating against the wealthy homes, they made out fine because their values went down for flood insurance or some other economic consequence. So the people who really got, hurt the most were the lower demographic people who came to the town. And by the way, the real estate community, they don't tell you this. They don't tell you that. You assume when you go on MLS and you look at a home for sale that the assessed value is what you're buying into until the next, townwide or citywide assessment. That's what we did. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, good evening. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to have our voice to be heard. And I'm one of those 400, home buyers in 2018. I just want to share you my story, my family story. So we're actually coming from another state, and we have two children. One is 2 months old, one is a 3-year-old. And when we decide in which town we want to live in, we consider many cities, and Barrington is definitely one of our best choice. And we still believe so. And it's just very astonished and shocking to know that they changed their, tax rule. And when we buy the house, we were actually assured by the agent, by our agent, the seller's agent, the sellers, they said the tax will be assessed every 4 to 5 years, and there will be no change, in the non-assessment year. And now that rule has been changed, and just all of a sudden, it just out of nowhere. So we are kind of, very heartbreaking sometimes to some extent. And, this means a lot, not only financially, but psychologically, mentally, and just a lot of pressure. But I just want to share my feelings and my story with you so that you can consider everything. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, President Carroll, can I have his name, please?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
How 2 St. Andrews Way. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Carl Salvo, and the address here is most important, 136 County Road. As most of you may know, 136 County Road has been in the education business for over 70 years. And back in 2017, I was encouraged by Bank Newport, the state of Rhode Island, and Small Business Administration to take on the challenge to bring a holistic approach to young education for Barrington. I can say that I came, I bought a space, and I started my business. It's successful. but I fought my taxes because of this 100% assessment of what I paid for it. I presented my case. I was turned down on like property values. On my second appeal, I attempted to show like businesses. I only have the ability for so many children in my building. There are my competitors, which we're all full because Barrington's the place to be, but Apple Blossom is a holistic approach, full-time chef. We're teaching the principles that are built upon this town. My evaluations went up my taxes went up over 27%. I came to this very room and was ridiculed that I must have bought the wrong business in the wrong town for the wrong price. You have got to be kidding me. I only have so many children. I can only generate so much income. My competitors are 4 times as many children, and they're paying less than half of it because they haven't had a sale, and their taxes are lower. It just doesn't make sense for a town to look at me and ridicule me for trying to bring something. Mr. Cuna has been to our place. We're making a difference in Barrington. It is a fantastic place. I live in Middletown, Rhode Island, where the maximum amount of increase is 2.5%. In Barrington, it was 10 times that in the first year and another percentage on top of that in the second year. I'm going to go out of business. I'm sorry. I can't afford to charge people to cover my taxes. It's a sad state to allow this to be 100% with no recuse or be ridiculed that I picked the wrong business in the wrong location. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Evening. My name is Janet Richardson. I'm going to read because I'm a little nervous. I reside at 9 Manor Road. My husband and I have been town residents for 35 years. I purchased the home on Manor Road at the end of November 2018 because we needed a one-story house to better accommodate the physical condition my husband deals with. At that time, the real estate taxes on the home we bought were $7,906.47, and that was the expenditure on which we factored into the purchase. Unbeknownst to either myself or our realtor, the real estate taxes were about to be jacked up to $10,823.47, an almost $3,000 increase. At the very least, the realtors should all have been advised of the change about to take place. We would have contested this action before its implementation and at a minimum closed in the 90 days instead of the 30 days that we opted for, because that would have put us into the 2009 sales category and at least given us 1 additional year at the 2018 rate. I am perfectly happy to pay fair and equitable town taxes based on the next town-wide assessment, when theoretically almost everyone's assessment will go up, and the mill rate will most likely adjust downward, as has always happened in the past. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
My name's Randall Hodge. I live at 75 Ferry Lane. Just a story to share with you. I'm new to Rhode Island. My wife and I moved here exactly a year ago. We're born and raised in California. We moved to Georgia as part of a job transition, and moved to Rhode Island as part of my job transition exactly a year ago. We had to find a home here in a short period of time, and we settled on Barrington because it's a beautiful place for all the reasons we all live here. I knew what the taxes were coming in, and I expected that they would be considerably consistent over the next period of time as I adjusted my style of living to a more expensive place to live than Georgia. The house that I purchased, I had to buy in a distressed state because I had a very short window of time to find a place. I didn't negotiate hard. I needed a place. My taxes at the time had been $23,000 a year. This last year, they were reassessed. They went up 38.5%. It's $36,000 a year. That's $1,000 more a month. For me to pay $1,000 more a month, I obviously have to make $2,000 more a month in income. That's $24,000 a year. I can't go to my employer and say I need a $24,000 a year raise to pay for my change in taxes. I think the key points I want to make here is there was no disclosure of this change that was going to be impending here that was going to impact my costs so much. I was looking at houses in East Greenwich. That was the competing city. I had a house over there lined up that I was competing against my house here. I chose this one because I wanted to live here. Had it been disclosed that tax was going to change, I would have went to East Greenwich. There's no question in my mind. I wouldn't have bought this house. The second key point is to make the valuation on a house, it has to be a fair market assessment, right? And if it wasn't disclosed to me that that tax rate was going to go up, the value of that house was artificially obtained at what I'm being taxed upon. I want to leave you with this. So this doesn't just impact me. Every single homeowner in Barrington, when they go to sell their house, they're going to be faced with buyers that are making a buying decision based on a maximum monthly payment that they can afford. For every $100 more in taxes they're paying, at a 4% interest rate, that's devaluing the property of that house $25,000. So imagine that across all the transactions that are going to happen from here on out with that law. So to second everybody's motion here, I recommend that you reconsider that tax assessment. Do it based on a fair practice. Disclose to people in advance that it's going to make that change so that when they're in the buying process, they have full disclosure of what the value of their house is going to be and what their payments are going to be. And I ask you to reconsider that and continue to have Barrington be a place that attracts the best people to come and live here, and they don't decide to go somewhere else like East Greenwich. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Antonella Fine. My husband and I purchased our home at 3 Lafayette Court in Barrington in October 2018 and have thoroughly enjoyed starting a new life here with our 2 children in this great community. However, when our property taxes were reassessed this year at nearly $5,000 above the previous owner's property taxes, without any additions or value added to the home, we were completely blindsided. No one, not even our realtors, was aware of this change in tax code, and frankly, had we known about it prior to purchasing our home, we would have strongly considered moving elsewhere. New homeowners, especially those with young children, like many who choose to come to Barrington, carefully budget this enormous purchase against many other financial obligations. To ask new residents to disproportionately contribute taxes to the community based on sale price discriminates against them and places an unjust additional financial burden on them. When our friends and colleagues ask us, as they often do, about our experience moving to Barrington and if we would recommend that they do the same, we want to tell them how great it is to live here, not advise them to look elsewhere because the community takes advantage of new residents and makes moving here unaffordable. Please remove this unjust property tax valuation rule and restore our faith in the community that we were excited to join.
Good evening. I'm James Galloway, 7 Harbor Road, colleague of Randy, and I don't have much to add to what my neighbors have so brilliantly articulated, except maybe a piece of caution from experience. We also moved here a year ago, also with FM Global, but we moved here from, ironically, Barrington, Illinois. where they enacted a similar tax policy. And we purchased our house in Barrington, Illinois, 8 years ago and sold it for $350,000 less last year. The house went from $900,000 to $550,000. That's what you're going to see. Several people have said the real estate agents didn't tell us about this. They all know now, and they're all going to tell people. I too was looking at East Greenwich and the east side of Providence. If my colleagues from FM Global come here from around the world, what am I going to tell them when they say, hey, where's a good place to settle? You're probably going to say East Greenwich is your safest bet because you know your taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Brandon Martinez, and I'm on 2 Beaver Road. I'm also one of the 400 new members who moved here. We moved here the Tuesday before Thanksgiving of last year. I don't really know how much more else to add. I'll just kind of tell you my story. Our taxes went up over 16% in the past year, and we bought in Barrington for the same reason everyone else did, and we bought here at the top of our budget and found a place. We kind of stretched our budget to move here. And moving here caused us to, the tax rate caused us to pull our budget down and to rein it in. And where that money came from was the stuff that we did in the town that we loved. We stopped buying books at Barrington Books and we started going to big retailers. We stopped having Saturday mornings at Vienna Bakery. We stopped going to we go to the Daily Scoop over the summer. And so we stopped using all the different stuff, and all the local town amenities that we loved was the stuff that was the easiest thing to cut out of our budget. And so not only is it tighter on us, but it's also more impactful on the community as well, and where we're spending our money and where we're choosing not to spend our money as well. I think what the practice that was done, specifically not having it told to us, with our lawyers having to talk to the town of Barrington to get the property tax assessment, they could have easily told us that this rule was in place, what to look for, and we would have readjusted our budget and not bought a house. Our top of our budget would have been $125 less than it was what we bought it for. I think it's an unethical practice, and it does borderline on discrimination at worst. Thank you so much.
Emily Calandrelli, 43 Chapin Road. I may have been the first person to approach Mr. Minardi regarding my $5,000 increase in taxes, a 37.5% from when I purchased my home in 2018. I'm 61 years old, divorced, retired. I've lived in Barrington for 25 years. I raised my son here. I had hoped to live my retired years in Barrington, a town that I love, a town that holds so many good memories for me. But with this exorbitant tax increase, this will no longer be possible for me. Had I known that my taxes would increase by $5,000 on a non-assessment year, I never would have purchased this home. But apparently no one knew about this tax increase except for a few people at Town Hall. So now, at 61, I'll have to move again. But this time, sadly, it won't be in Barrington. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Fred Almeida. I'm a builder developer in town. I currently own about 28 different properties in town. And the way I feel about this whole thing, a lot of the people that came up I know, I've sold houses to them, and if you pay that much money for a house, you should be taxed that much money for a house. Over the years, I've been in this town all my life, and over the years there's been a lot of different properties that when I got my tax bill I would say, wow, this is a lot of money, and it wasn't fair. I own Barrington Self-Storage, so I send in all of my what we make a year there, and they calculate what you should pay taxes on. And it's the same thing with residential properties. If you pay $1 million for a house, you should pay $1 million for taxes. And then everybody else's property in town, the tax rate should get adjusted to that. You know, I mean, Mike Bonandi's doing his job. If he wasn't doing his job, I'm sure he would be gone. It's just, if you pay it, you should pay the tax on it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi, my name's Lisa Bowman. I live at 16 Highview. We purchased our house last June 2018. We came from north of Boston, Massachusetts. We love the area. I have 2 kids. One's a junior, actually a senior in college, and a senior in high school, but he doesn't attend Barrington. We just love the area. New to Rhode Island, very happy. Had the whole assessment done, went through the whole close process in June of 2018, only to find out about a month later that our tax bill was 33% higher, which it just isn't transparent the way this whole thing has been processed. I think based on all these stories that you've heard, there's one thing, is transparency. People have different reasons for moving here. One is education. One, obviously, is it's a beautiful town. We're very happy here. But as an investment, to have the taxes go up that much, north of Boston or in Boston, the house values keep increasing. I'm not so sure about here, but that tax increase is going to affect everyone. I think, we're very disappointed. It's not transparent. I can't imagine that the rest of the public purchasing homes, no matter where, would be not shocked to receive a 33% tax increase. I don't think people when purchasing a home have that in the back of their mind. There's definitely wiggle room, but not 33%. And as far as Mr. Minardi goes, I have been battling with him for weeks, trying to find out the reason why did my tax go up, our tax bill go up 33%. His answers have been very vague. One in particular I asked, was everyone's tax increase 33% townwide? Did this happen? And his response was no, not everyone, some were more. And that was it. So there's 2 problems. One, the tax increase, and also dealing with someone like Mr. Minardi. We deserve better, okay? Tax-paying citizens deserve better response and more professionalism. We love the town, but there's an issue with this, and I think you need to be aware. I think you are aware at this point, and I hope something is done for the sake of the town and for the people that live here and for people that may want to move here, because I think that'll affect their decision. Just as if I had known that, I think I would have had second thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Chris Schwalk. I'm a realtor in town for the last 25 years. I've lived in Barrington for almost 70 years. I think we've created a dual taxing system. Normally, we all know how this works. We reassess everybody. The values may go up, and then the mill rate goes down. Or vice versa, the values go down, the mill rate goes up. You are taxing people at a different rate when you're not taxing the whole group at the same time, when you're not reassessing them at the same time. I just want to read what it says at the top of the appeal process. It says, the reason for an appeal, it is the intent of the General Assembly to ensure that all taxpayers in Rhode Island are treated equitably. Ensuring the taxpayers are treated fairly begins where cities and towns meet defined standards related to assessing property values. All properties should be assessed in a uniform manner, and properties of equal value should be assessed the same. I buy and sell houses, and I have buyers who buy houses. It's affecting both of them. Got a young family trying to sell their house. Now that we know, because the realtors had no clue this was happening, it was never announced to us, people are mad at us because we didn't tell them that their taxes were going to go up, but nobody told us. It's outrageous. people are not buying because they know their tax rate's going to go up. It's wrong. It's wrong, and you guys need to fix it. Thank you.
Pete McAlmont, 45 Bluff Road. I didn't buy a house last year. I bought a house in 1983. But listen to these comments. Maybe want to address the issue which I addressed around on the last valuation, where our property went up 33%. The last work that we had done on our house goes back prior to 1980. So other than replacing a roof, which we had to do, but a 33% increase was the same kind of jolt that some of these people are talking about. It happened on a reassessment year, which if the reassessment year was next year, some of these people were probably going to experience that kind of jolt. And at that time, I spoke to Peter DeAngelis had been there, and I talked to him about the amount of increase in the rates. And there are some communities where if you've been living in your house, then the tax rate can't go up. Well, we don't have a proposition to. Some municipalities do. But it's the same kind of jolt. I mean, suddenly, we're definitely well into our retirement and beyond. We're living on our fixed income, and it goes up 33%. I went to the appeal. I went to the second appeal. There was one member on that second appeal who said, well, you must have done something to your house. I said, no, I mow my lawn, I paint the house. But it went up 33%. So it's not just these exorbitant rates. I sympathize with these people who are totally come in and caught unaware, and that the realtors weren't aware enough to warn them of what they're, and it will affect, when we sell our house, no doubt, if someone looks at that. But it's something that we've experienced, these gigantic jumps in one evaluation, and that just shouldn't be if you've been living here, because there you're caught and you're in a bind. What do you do? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Sung. I live in 17 Half Mile. I am one of the 400 families who moved here last year. I have one simple question to ask all of you to think about just for one moment. What does it mean for you to live in a good neighborhood, in a good town? And I would like you to do the same as well. In my mind, good town is a place where decisions and policies are made out of democratic process, where voices can be heard. I don't think the taxation, I don't remember any conversations that took place to make this decision. Certainly, if there was, I was not informed of it. So I would like you to reconsider. By gathering voices, we already have heard enough, an overwhelming amount of input and feedback from the people here, and I'm sure there are a lot more who wanted to be here, but who couldn't be here tonight. So I would like you to reconsider and take a look into it. Second point is, because of the taxation, let's hypothetically say that I am interested in fixing my house. I would like to have my house well-oriented so that people, when they drive by, they see a good and nice, well-taken care of property. Now I am frightened to do any work on my house because, I don't know, who knows, maybe tax will go even higher for fixing roof, for fixing windows, for fixing anything. So what kind of negative consequences would this cause going forward? I would like you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Beth Splain for Rumstick Circle. I've been approached by two long-standing Barringtonians who are not affected by this real estate tax assessment issue, both of whom I did not know, but they, I guess, saw me on TV, which I didn't realize this was even televised. They both said to me, keep fighting because you're doing the right thing and what's happening right now is wrong. And that's why I'm here. That's why we're all here. I appealed our tax assessment increase and was denied because I didn't include our appraisal report, which may have helped him come to a different conclusion. That wasn't a requirement on the form. It asked if I had an appraisal, and I wanted to get it in, and I had an appraisal, but I didn't know it was, mandatory, so I didn't include it. If I had known, I would have included it, but that's why it was denied. So now I'm appealing again. But here's the question. If the new way of assessing is based on sales price, then why would my appraisal have mattered? I even managed to include lots of data on comparable homes to mine, ones that are the same size, inside, the same lot size, the same year built. And there's one house near me that is being assessed at $600,000 less than mine, even though we have the same size house. It's the same in terms of all of those factors. The process is arbitrary, or it seems that way, and the council's unwillingness to have an open dialogue about the issue is just flat out wrong. I'm no expert on sunshine laws, but if there's no pending litigation, why not have an open forum? You were elected to represent the people of Barrington, and I'm not sure who you're representing when you're silent on this issue. I had an email discussion with a council member, and I appreciate that this person emailed me back when I sent an email to the group. And I was told that the tax assessment issue is not in your purview, but rather it falls under the tax board. But I've heard nothing from the tax board. As far as I know, they handle only individual complaints. I don't see them dealing with in any broad way with the concerns of local citizens. I'm asking that the council protect its citizens by working with the board to arrive at a mutually beneficial solution. Right now, it feels like the council is sticking its head in the sand as if you have absolutely no authority in the matter. And even if you were to say that you have no legal authority, you at least have some moral authority on some level. Here's another excerpt from the council member with whom I had an email exchange. Quote, these are his or her words. I bought my house at the end of 2015, about 1 year prior to a revaluation. I bought it for about $70,000 over the assessed value. It was no surprise to me that when reassessments were done, my house had been reassessed for about $70,000 over its prior assessment. That was the right thing to do because the reality is that my house was underassessed when I bought it, unquote. But the council person is actually making my point. I have no problem paying my fair share of taxes, but you see, his or her taxes increased when the house, along with all of the other houses in Barrington, was reassessed according to the lawful 3-year reassessment period, not in an off year like mine was and all the people here. I wonder how he would have felt if his new home had been assessed outside of the legal timing and he had received a $70,000 increase shortly after he had moved in. He also said, everyone should probably consider that we're just over 1 year away from a revaluation, when all the sales data that we're talking about will be incorporated into the process, regardless of whether the assessor should have used the data in a year when no town-wide revaluation was performed. Again, the council person made my point. Why did Mr. Minardi make this rogue decision when we were only 1 year away from a legal revaluation? Whether the council person meant to or not, the implication from his or her words was that we're only a year away, so what's the big deal? My answer was that my increase of 33%, almost $8,000 in 1 year, was a big deal to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gloria Huang Frazano. My family is a young family. I have 3 young children, all under the age of 5. We moved in when I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and we were not one of the 400 that bought a house in 2018, but we actually bought at the end of 2017. And somehow we also got caught up into the maelstrom of this tax increase. And we were very happy to come into this new home, ready to deliver this child, our 3rd, because that was the whole point, was to come to a community that would be able to provide a wonderful environment for our children that was nurturing, because we had heard so many supportive belief of this community. And we believed in that, so we decided to make this investment, and not only just for the investment from our children, but for our future. However, in 2018, when we got this assessment, it just really blew us out of the water, because it was basically approximately 20% more than we had known and what we were informed of. And looking back, we would have made a different decision. But I think the harder thing to have to explain to our children is why, when my son asks me, and he says, "What is this building?" and we go by the library, I said, "This is the town hall," and he asks me, what do they do in here? And I explained to him, this is where they make the decision for our town. But eventually they're going to hear also the discussions that that's going to be happening between my husband and I as we talk about in fear of more increases that may occur. And our children will also understand. And then I wonder, what kind of belief am I installing into our children for this democratic process? And I'd like to hope that, this meeting and our expressions of our concerns and can convey to you guys to really just keep in mind, it's not just the adults here, but it's also for our children and for them to know whether or not they have a belief in our democratic system. And furthermore, my son asked me, "Oh, Mom, is this the house you're going to live in forever?" I don't know. I don't know if we can really afford to do that. I'd love to have the idyllic possibility that when they go to college they have somewhere to come back to, but can we really afford the constant increase in the taxes? Because that becomes a huge expenditure, and that becomes an expenditure when you are at a stage where you want to enjoy your life for all the hard work that you've done. But in the end, if you have to repay that back and keep paying forward to something that you hoped that was going to give back to you, you're going to move elsewhere. People are going to leave, and that's just not what I don't think this town believes in. So I just wanted to have you just convey my beliefs and also my expression to all of you to understand what we're going through, and to please listen. Please hear what we have to say. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Kirk, and I live at 6 Harbor Road, near those guys. And I'm a realtor in town as well. I've been a realtor for about 10 years. And I think the one thing, as a realtor, and there are a lot of us here, we pride ourselves on our ethics and how we represent this town. We love to sell this town. It's an incredible place to live. I moved here myself 11 years ago. I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. But when this started to happen, we didn't know. And we weren't able to represent that to our clients, many of whom are sitting here in this room. That feels terrible. And you put us in a really, really unfortunate position now by having to sort of backtrack. But we want to do the right thing going forward, which is why we all wrote a letter to the editor that Josh published. Hopefully you guys read. But at this point, I have one question. There is a town solicitor. There's a tax, Mr. Minardi, we know, we respect what he does. Was that town solicitor ever asked if this was a legal interpretation of that Portsmouth case that he keeps falling back on? We are the only town in Rhode Island that is doing this. Why? That doesn't make any sense. So I asked that question, and I'd like that to be on the record. Was that town solicitor ever asked? And if so, I'd love to know what the answer is, and I think we all would here. Thank you very much.
So good evening. My name is Greg Canfield, 2 Governor Bradford Drive. I just want to tell you the story of my family. So we moved here back in 2018. I'm a lawyer. My wife's a pediatrician. We've got 2 small children. They don't need the schools yet, but we're moving here to get ready. And actually, Ms. Kirk sold us, or helped us to buy our house. So when this tax increase happened, I was truly curious. And being a lawyer, I went and read the Supreme Court case. And I went and read all of the Supreme Court cases on this issue, including those naming Mr. Minardi. And what I think is truly interesting here is that the tax assessor's position is based on a complete misreading of the Supreme Court precedent. And in that case, there were taxpayers who said, we don't agree with the assessment of our property because the economy's gone down and our property value has gone down. So we think we should be able to challenge that. And we think that we should be able to bring evidence in a year outside of our update. And we should be able to say that our property value has been reduced. And what the court said is the tax law is ambiguous. And in Rhode Island, when tax laws are ambiguous, we interpret them in favor of the taxpayer. And so what they said is that in favor of the taxpayer, we will allow you to come in and say, my property assessment should be reduced. In this case, what Mr. Minardi's done is he's done the opposite, is he's interpreted the tax law in favor of the taxing authority. And so what we've done is we've taken people who moved to town whose property prices may, on May 1st, for example, we bought our house on May 1st, it might be a certain price, and what any realtor will tell you is that a property price on May 1st is not the same as it's going to be in December. And that's why we use a 3-year assessment, is because then it gets leveled out over those 3 years. You get more data points, because what you pay for a house may not be the fair and reasonable value of the house on December 31st. So what we've done is we've said, nope, we're going to lock it at that date, and that's what you're stuck with. And we're not going to give you the benefit that we give every other taxpayer in the city of saying, we're going to give you the benefit of all the other properties to say that on the 31st, it may not be what it was worth on May 1st. And so by doing this, you've now created a situation where we bought our house on May 1st, and our neighbor's house that might be identical have two absolutely different taxation. So you have a house here, taxpayers who are brand new to the town, who are sitting and looking here and saying, maybe we made the wrong choice. Maybe we wouldn't have done this. And why is this happening? And what is our town council doing? And the fact that our town council dove into executive session under a belief that there, my understanding, was a threat of litigation, well, that's not what the Sunshine Laws say. Is that when you have an issue of importance to the city, is we debate it, we talk about it, we understand it, and we give notice to people that things are going to change. Because otherwise you end up with very unhappy taxpayers, and you end up with property prices that are bound to decline. So I'd ask you, and I'd join with my neighbors in saying that we'd like you to take a look at this. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to be heard? I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Okay, seeing no one, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to discuss and act on the statement of the Town Council on tax assessment issue. So I put together a draft of the statement from the Town Council. I've confirmed with our solicitor that the statements as to law in there are correct. The factual statements are correct. Would anyone like to be heard on this?
Yes. So there were two groups of changes that would make me more comfortable that I'd like to discuss before formally making a motion to make any changes. But it's that in some instances here, in a couple sentences in one area and then an entire section, the council is taking a position of making assumptions on other people's motives or intent and reasoning for doing things, and I thought we could possibly remove those. So one is because of the way that it's set up in question and answer. For example, did the assessor reassess properties to collect more taxes? The answer to that question is about motivation, and so I'm not comfortable with an emphatic statement about somebody else's intention. I completely agree with all the facts and that changing this doesn't change more or less taxes, but to emphatically say what somebody else's motivation was makes me uncomfortable.
Anything else?
Can you say where that? The first.
Yeah, page 1 under did the assessor reassess properties?
Yeah, I should address that.
Okay.
It's not a motivation. This is factually the way that the law works is that we don't collect more or less taxes.
I understand that. And I'm not, so what I would propose there is to begin at none of these variances and strike absolutely not, to be clear, comma, because that doesn't speak to the facts, that speaks to the motivation.
I disagree.
Then change the question to, does the reassessment of properties collect more taxes? But the question specifically asks the reason for the change, the reason for the decision.
Okay, I think I understand.
Okay. And so then, along with that, well, if we're going to change the question, then it's moot. So the other was the two questions later under why are some people complaining about the change in tax assessments for their property. I would like to see that whole section stricken, only because it's us making assumptions as to the motivation of why people are unhappy. And I think we heard many reasons tonight, some of them reflected in the statement, some of them not. And rather than try to be inclusive about why other people are or are not doing something, I don't think we need to take a position at all on that.
Okay. Anything else?
At the bottom of the third page, where it states, if and only if the tax assessor or that independent board finds the tax assessed is wrong, or if the state tax administrator intervenes, there's another step that I think should be included, and that's that if there's a written opinion from the solicitor that the assessment is illegal. And so with that included there, then at the end of the sentence to say that none of those conditions have been met, that we do not have a written opinion from the solicitor stating that
Not going to take public comments, or
that it's believed to be illegal.
Okay.
And I checked with the solicitor prior to that to make sure that my understanding of that was correct. And
okay. Anything else?
That was all for me.
Okay. Kate, did you have any?
I thought it was very well done. I had one tiny, in the second of the last bullet, it seems that after the hearing is held, the bar has 30 days to render a decision. It's just that word missing.
Yes.
Where's that, please?
That's a typo on page 5 in the last bullet. After the hearing is held, the BAR has 30 days to render. The word TO, right before render.
I can speak to Jacob's requests. Under did the assessor reassess properties to collect more taxes? I can understand to take out absolutely not, to be clear, as long as the rest of is, so none would be
none would
be capitalized.
So none would be the N, and none would be capital. That would be the beginning, and then there's only one other slight change that would be in line with that if the question remained as is, and it's just that the start of the second paragraph where it says the reason the tax assessor, it would just say the stated reason the tax assessor.
Yeah, I think we should probably take him at his word.
There's a difference between taking somebody at their word and saying it as fact. I don't, I wouldn't put alleged in there because I don't think it's to that extent. But at the beginning of this whole situation, I got into some hot water because I took everything I heard at face value, and I came out looking kind of foolish. So I'm not going to speak for other people.
You'd like to insert the word stated between
Yes.
the and reason.
I can agree to those changes
Okay.
only. I do not agree with striking out
This section.
the section, because I think if this is to inform residents about the appeals process, there are other reasons why people want to or should know about that they can ask for an appeal. And I think it states that very well. And this is supposed to be an informative.
Okay.
So I don't agree with that, but I do agree with the
ones in the section on did the assessor reassess?
Yep.
Okay.
I think on that section, I think it's important to include it because what I've heard tonight, well, we hear a lot of the concerns that we've described here. I see that some people are conflating different circumstances that they personally encountered with what's going on right now. I'm not sure who it was, but someone mentioned that they had already been through an appeal. Right? That was not a house purchased in 2018 that went through that process, because no house purchased in 2018 has been through the appeal process based on this reassessment. So that's someone talking about a purchase in a prior revaluation year. So I think it's important to get out there this explanation of the concern,
right,
so that people can identify, yes, people might be upset with their assessment in a revaluation year, but that's not really what we're talking about here.
I took that to mean that they thought the appeal was simply talking with the tax assessor and did not recognize that the appeal was going all the way through the Board of Assessment review.
No, because someone said they had taken 2 appeals. So that would have been to the assessor and then the assessing board of review. Yeah. And so that had to be from a prior assessment.
Or
so
they could have maybe gone twice.
When was the board? Has the board met yet? Yes.
The board hasn't. They haven't dealt with any of these. And I've heard other things that are like that where people are expressing concerns about let's call it the off-year valuation. But they're not realizing their situation has nothing to do with the off-year valuation. It's separate. So I think it's important we keep that in there so that...
When you say keep that in there...
That was the second question, I think, that Jacob referenced. And I understand his point. We don't know what everyone's complaints are for, but I think the disclaimer, there may be a number of reasons. We're not... Okay. I can't exhaustively list every concern someone has, but I think generally people need to understand the issue, and I think this question explains it well.
Okay.
I did want to check one of the facts that's in the first paragraph, probably before it gets published, and I honestly don't know the answer. The variances, so this is excuse me. All right, the variances on the decrease side ranged from $500 to $574,000. These are about 100 properties whose assessments decreased because of this. And then it says a variance, the ones that increased, I'm sorry, those were the increases.
Yes.
Okay, I think there was one outlier in the variances that would show like an $810,000 underassessment. But when I looked at the property, it appeared to be a road that was assessed at $90,000, and I just don't know what to make of that. So I don't know if there was one that was reassessed $810,000 higher or not. And I just think we should probably figure that one out.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure how to do that. I don't know if the assessor knows the answer on that property or what it was. A brand new lot? Okay. So would that really qualify in your mind? That's a different animal than what we're talking about. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, then that number is correct. Okay. And those were my concerns.
Okay. And in terms of the Are you comfortable with the proposed changes to the second, did the assessor reassess? Those are proposed by...
I mean, I think the way that I would handle it is to change the question. Say, you know, did the town collect more in taxes because of the change in the assessments?
Okay.
Rather than change the response.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that too. Just and filter that down to the other section with which I took issue, leaving the text there, but maybe changing the heading of a question to here are some of the reasons people may do it, so that we're not ascribing intent to other people in our statement.
I just want to make sure that I got your proposed change. Did the town collect more in taxes as a result of this reassessment? Is that your...
I think that would be fine, yeah. I don't know if I said it exactly that way, but that does the job. I'm not sure that I agree on the next one that we were discussing, only because it says, why are some people complaining about the change in tax assessments for their property? And certainly we've heard these things just here tonight. So some people certainly are complaining for these reasons. There undoubtedly are others, I think, but...
So how would you change that?
I wouldn't change that one.
Okay.
I think that works fine. That's it.
And I don't know if this is the right manner in which to include language that I believe this should have been made public, this change, and that should be reflected in this statement, that I think upon reflection at least, I would have liked the real estate, the town to know that this was
Absolutely.
a change that occurred, and I don't know whether...
Anything else?
How can we add that?
Excuse me?
How can we add that?
You know, right at the beginning, clarify, I mean, after it's clarifying its limited role, we can say, in retrospect, I mean, not in retrospect, I think we would have liked to have been notified, Sure. Let me think about where that might best fit, and I think it just needs to be a simple sentence of...
Are you comfortable with the changes to the section that's now renamed, did the town collect more in taxes as a result of the reassessment?
Yeah, the changes that we've been discussing are fine with me.
Okay.
President Carroll, can you just have Mrs. Weymouth repeat? She asked for a change, absolutely not. To be clear, none, and I did not.
Actually, initially, Councilor Breyer suggested that we delete the words absolutely not, to be clear, period.
Okay.
Or it's no period. And then start with a capital N in none.
Okay, thank you.
And Vice President Weymouth agreed with that,
Okay.
and with the change that is the stated reason, which is the next paragraph.
Yes.
Maybe we could add a statement at the end of the opening statement.
Yeah.
It appears that if you put it between the second and third paragraph, just a statement, a one-sentence paragraph, as a new third paragraph, that might be the appropriate place to do it.
Yeah, at the end of
And then you use that last paragraph as kind of summing up that statement.
it's coming up with the word.
In the opening?
In the opening, yeah. Make a new paragraph 3.
Yeah.
That makes that statement. That seems to be a place where it would fit.
Point of order. I would like you to read the whole statement.
A lot of people here who have no idea what you're talking about.
We don't have it in front of us, and this is very
Thank you.
important to us. Get an answer?
We'll publish this tomorrow.
So why didn't you answer me? I guess I don't count. I'm invisible.
Mr. Carroll, this is a farce, and you should be embarrassed. All 5 of you should just be embarrassed. And I hope the press reports that I said that, and you can go to school on it. Thank you. Jeez, what kind of people are you?
Please, show a little respect. Do not,
I had all the respect in the world.
I don't want
up until
cursing in
just
this room.
now.
I don't want cursing in this room. You understand?
I lost my respect. And my vote.
Well, in the last paragraph in the first section, we could say, that where it says, in sum, the town council does not, we could add to that, change assessments, and the town council did not learn of this. Is that what you're trying to get at?
I think the realtors.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when this tax assessment change was made, it should have been made public.
Not just that we didn't know, but that it wasn't publicly
Yeah, that
announced,
it wasn't announced publicly.
except
that this,
in the changed assessment letters that people received.
Yeah, that there wasn't a...
Right. Once the
this is-
decision was made, it should have been announced that there was a new policy.
Yes.
Steve, on where we can add that?
Potentially, this is on page 3 at the end of the first paragraph, reads, the council does not get to decide how taxes are assessed, and we didn't do so here. Something to the effect of, because the council didn't vote on this, there was no public discussion of it, this is regrettable, or it is regrettable that this did not occur. Something along those lines, but I think it fits there.
I think so. So this is, why did the...
Yeah, that's Joy's suggestion. So making the tax assessment changes in public would have ameliorated, or alleviated, many of the concerns. But I think
regrettable is it?
Yeah.
It's a good.
So, council denied.
Yeah.
The town council. So in the section, which is... this is page 6. At the end of the first paragraph. Council did not vote on this.
Proposal would have been made or been discussed in public.
Yeah.
And it is regrettable that this did not occur, and then I would add Joy's
Proposal, so it was not, so the proposal was not discussed in public. Discussed. Okay. Okay. I think we talked about the changes, and I want to read, I'll read the proposed changes. But there was one that we did not, which was Councilor Breyer mentioned, and this is on the bottom of page 3, if and only if the tax assessor or that independent board. You wanted to add the rest of the statute in there?
Right, so the start of the second line, the very last line on the page, so
the
state tax administrator, and then before going to intervenes, so state tax administrator agrees with a written opinion from the town solicitor that the assessment is illegal, and then goes back to intervenes. Slide that down.
Okay. We could put that in the footnote and just say, after the site, say parenthetically, the statute also requires an opinion from the solicitor as that the tax is illegal.
I mean, I think it's appropriate in the full text. If you disagree, we can discuss it.
The state tax administrator agrees with the opinion of the solicitor that the tax is illegal and intervenes.
I would say a and not the opinion. Only because we don't have one. Only because we don't have one. V makes it sound as if we do.
With an opinion is illegal and, okay.
Well, and then the next line, it's stating that we do not have that written opinion.
So, so the first introductory statement stays the same. The first question changes to, this is the first question, Mary, and it's on page 1. Instead of did the assessor, it should say, did the town collect more in taxes as a result of the reassessment? Question mark. And then delete absolutely not to be clear and capitalize the N in none. You have that? And then the next paragraph should be the stated. You got that? After the sentence on page 3, after the question, why did the council, that paragraph at the end of that where it said, and we didn't do so here, this statement, and this is one I want everyone to just check me on. The council did not vote on this, so the proposal was not discussed in public. It is regrettable that this did not occur, period. There's more after that, but I just want to make sure you had that.
The council did not vote on this.
Comma, so the proposal was not.
So the proposal was not.
Discussed in public, period. It is regrettable that this did not occur, period.
And that statement is going where, Mike?
This is right at the end of the paragraph, first paragraph in the section that begins, why did the town council? Page 3.
Okay, so at the end of, the council does not get to decide, and then at the end of that sentence, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then after that, as the next sentence, after the word occur, making the tax assessment changes public
Yes.
could have alleviated
Yes.
many concerns.
Yes.
Okay. On the bottom of page 3, in that same question, the sentence that begins, if and only if, you see where it says,
Yes.
State Tax Administrator. So after the word administrator, insert this, agrees with an opinion of the solicitor
Yes.
that the assessment
Yes.
is illegal and then it goes back to intervenes.
Can I read that back to you?
Yes.
So it is that last paragraph, if and where it begins, if and only if. I'm just going to read it from there. If and only if the tax assessor or that independent board finds the tax assessed is wrong, comma, or if the state tax administrator agrees with an opinion of the solicitor that the assessment is illegal.
And That was all right.
Is illegal. That, and then it goes back to intervenes?
Is illegal and intervenes.
Oh, and, I'm sorry, and intervenes. Okay, yes.
And then on page 5, last bullet, we should have 30 days, insert the word to render. That was a typo.
Mr. President, that first bullet, third line down, the taxpayer will explain to the assessor why she thinks the assessor is wrong. We should probably do he/she or she/he.
You can add he before he/she or she/he. Anything else?
So there was a second part to the change regarding the illegal opinion, and that's to state prior to the last sentence of that paragraph. So at the end of the sentence that was edited to include the statement about the opinion, to then state none of these conditions have been met, and for that reason there is no place for council intervention.
So you're saying in order to effect a correction, after that you would insert none?
Yes, yeah, new sentence. None of these conditions have been met, and for that reason there is no place for council intervention.
Yeah, I got that.
So the top.
I got that.
Top of page 4. So it's between these two sentences.
So you'd like to insert after the footnote 7, none of these conditions have been met, and for that reason there is no basis for council intervention? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
None of these conditions has been met?
I wish I had struck and right.
I didn't attend Barrington schools.
I think he's right.
Yeah, it's
Not
the,
one
it's
has.
the
Not
none,
one
yeah.
has, yeah.
So
You're right.
that's going after footnote 7 on
After
page
footnote
4.
7 and before we cannot.
And
None of
so-
these,
Yep, go ahead.
none of these conditions has been met, and for that reason, there is no basis for council intervention. It's here for sale. Any other changes? Do I hear a motion to adopt the statement of the Barrington Town Council with the changes presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President, if I could propose, since Mary has, I think, captured it, all the changes, tomorrow morning we'll retype that and get it out to the entire town council as well as the solicitor's office to make sure everyone's in agreement. And once that's done, then we'll make it public.
Okay. I think you can probably do it because if we
We can't say that we
Change it.
agree.
So you can you can circulate it among yourselves and see if it accurately reflects what we said, but we can't.
Oh, okay.
So we're stuck with it.
That's fine. We can do that.
I think it's important that we get it out as soon as we can.
So we could do it so that if you responded individually and directly, either back to the manager or the solicitor, you could take a last look at it, but if you prefer to just have staff incorporate the changes and make it public, we could do that too.
I think staff can do it.
Okay.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is presentation and discussion with Save the Bay. Thank you for being patient. Yes, it doesn't reach quite as far as we'd like.
That's all right. Thanks for having me. My name is Kate McPherson. I'm with Save the Bay, the Narragansett Bay Riverkeeper, and I have a short 10-minute presentation on the work we've been doing. Thank you. On the work we've been doing in the Run-Ins River watershed that leads to 100 Acre Cove. So just give me a minute to get set up, and I have something nice for you.
Sure.
That's good. I mean, it's not good. It's good. It sounded like it. People lost it. Morphine.
She's going to stay at the hospital.
Your dog would have something to say about that.
Rate is higher. Their taxes are substantially higher.
Not good.
If you lived there, I'm sure you would.
I'd love to know.
Spreading in all the stories how they were going bankrupt.
Yeah, they had the bankruptcy thing going.
We'll work with it tomorrow.
All right, so Save the Bay received a SNEP grant, Southeast New England Program grant, to take a look at the bacterial pollution that has been plaguing 100 Acre Cove for the better part of 30 years. So we're approximately a year into that grant right now, and we had several tasks to sort of lay out what has already been done, because a lot of really knowledgeable folks have spent a lot of time and effort looking at the bacteria problem in 100 Acre Cove, suggesting projects to improve that bacterial problem, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So starting with our first task, we gathered information about what has already been done. Various groups. For a long time, there was a watershed group that did water quality testing in the Cove on a very regular basis. Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection does water quality testing in the Run-Ins River, which is the main tributary into 100 Acre Cove. Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management goes out about once a month and does water quality testing in the Cove to make sure that it is still unsafe for shellfishing. We looked at things like MS4 permits. We looked at things like town planning documents. We looked at a variety of different sources to see what has already been done. And you can see this is just a timeline that shows from 1994 approximately to 2019. Actually, it goes back even earlier than that, 1988. And it just shows all the different effort that's been put in. The things on the bottom of the timeline are ongoing efforts like water quality monitoring or study groups that have been convened. And then the things on top are reports that have come out or initiatives that have been phased in to try and address not just bacterial problems, but all sorts of other water quality problems. And so then we took this information and we put it on an interactive Google My Maps so that we could represent this data visually. This is an example of what's considered best management practices, so construction techniques that you can do in town that will help improve water quality. So there's a couple of, this slide shows we identified 95 different best management practices in the town of Barrington alone. 100 Acre Cove is comprised of 3 different towns, really 4 different towns, but the 3 major towns are Barrington, Seekonk, East Providence, and a little bit of Swansea. And the unique thing about this, the unique property of this grant is that we have agreements from each of the towns to really work collaboratively together to identify projects. So there's approximately 95 different best management practices in Barrington. 11 of them are location-based, and 3 are located in this specific watershed. 2 of them have already been implemented, and 1 has been suggested. And then our next task was to partner with the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program to create some really detailed watershed maps of 100 Acre Cove. So you may be familiar with the large Narragansett Bay watershed map that came out in 2017, where Narragansett Bay Estuary Program did some really detailed GIS analysis. We contracted them for this project to do some detailed analysis for this watershed alone. And I'm going to share some images with our Tier 1 maps that we have from them. And this just shows the actual subset of data that we used to produce these maps. We went in and we collected more data than we needed, and then we sort of pinpointed exactly where we wanted to focus. So this is the most up-to-date land use map of land in Barrington, also within the 100 Acre Cove watershed. You can see it's fairly developed. We have a lot of beautiful wetlands here in Barrington, but there's also a lot of gray, and that's the developed area, impervious surfaces, and part of the story of the bacterial pollution in 100 Acre Cove is the stormwater runoff. So we do know that water quality in the cove is not good enough for shellfishing, even in dry weather. So we know there's some other input of bacteria, be it human or non-human sources, septic systems, waterfowl. We're not really sure right now. But it's also a really tremendous problem when it rains, and that is connected to impervious surfaces. I mentioned stormwater in my last slide. So as part of this project, we really wanted to map where are all the outfalls, where are all the catch basins, have towns been up to date with their MS4 permitting. And one of the reasons we at Save the Bay like to put our effort where the effort is needed, and so I've been working very closely with the town of Seekonk to make sure that they know where all of their stormwater outfalls were. At the start of this project, approximately 30% of the outfalls in this watershed were not on any map. Now we can confidently say that we know where all the outfalls in the whole watershed are. And this slide sort of speaks to the dry weather situation. There are theories that septic systems are contributing significantly to the bacterial problem. Now, Barrington, for the most part, is sewered, but there are still some small sections that are on septics. And so what Narragansett Bay Estuary Program was able to do was to do some spatial analysis using buildings per hectare that are on septic system and show heat maps of where the high concentrated, if septic systems aren't being properly maintained or are not built to the most recent standards, where there could be some bacterial pollution coming in through the soil, through the groundwater. And so for Barrington, the largest area of concern is sort of circled in red on the Knockham Hill area. We're aware that there's some new development proposed, some new septic systems proposed there, very close to the cove and in one of these sort of heat map areas. And then sea level rise is a tremendous issue for 100 Acre Cove. The salt marshes there with just a few feet of sea level rise will be inundated. So as you look at this map, the light green is where new marsh will want to make sure I get this right. So the light blue is new tidal habitat. So as you go to the right, sea level rises incrementally by foot. So blue habitat is new salt marsh, and that sounds really great. But salt marsh needs places to migrate. So that may mean that freshwater marshes or freshwater swamps will be converted into salt marshes as sea level rises. And marshes need to migrate through infrastructure. So if there are roads, if there are buildings, if there are hardened surfaces, you can't just turn a marsh into where there's a building. So marshes, the water's got to go somewhere, in other words. And then what's really telling about these maps are the pink. The pink is where we're going to lose tidal marsh habitat. So in other words, sea level will rise so much that the marshes become flooded and we lose those habitats. And 100 Acre Cove, I'm sure you all are aware, is rare species habitat for diamondback terrapins and other really valuable wildlife species that depend on salt marshes. The third piece of this grant was to determine whether or not we needed additional water quality monitoring. So I mentioned the monitoring that Mass DEP is doing in the river and Rhode Island DEM is doing in the cove. And they're communicating together, but they're not testing for one across-the-board bacteria. And so you can see this slide, there's several different bacteria that you can test for. And we've identified that it would be best if there was one really well thought out bacterial monitoring program that was targeted at the questions we want to answer. And the questions we want to answer are, where are the bacteria coming from? Are they human sources? And are the projects that we're doing remedying the situation? So this is still early stages for our grant, but we do know that better water quality testing will help inform our project making decisions. And so, like I said earlier, the best part about this grant is that all the towns in this watershed are on board and committed to really looking at projects. We're aware that Barrington just went through the MRP, Municipal Resilience Program, and you specifically identified priority projects for your town. I'm happy to announce that Seekonk is going through a very similar process. It's called the MVP project. And together with Save the Bay acting as a moderator, I really hope to discuss some projects that the towns themselves identify as priorities, and then hopefully with other rounds of funding through these MRP and MVP processes, we can start to implement those projects that we identify. And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, I'm sorry? Please, if you have questions.
Ann Strong, 55 Teat Avenue. I was part of the original group back in the early 90s who tested the river. We tested for different bacteria, we did a wet weather study, we did a shoreline survey, on and on. One of the things that we did want to do is to test the fecal coliform for species, and I'm wondering if you're going to do that, because the technology was just beginning at that point. It was way too expensive for we didn't have $125,000. So I'm wondering if that's something that's in the plan for this study.
That's a great question. Thanks for bringing it up. So as part of this study, we don't have funding to do any actual testing, but this is part of what we're doing. We're trying to reach out and find the best available science, the new science, the science that may necessarily not be approved by EPA, but has been used by others in different regions to really find sources. So there's lots of different ways that you can test to determine whether or not a bacteria is coming from people, but for a variety of reasons, these sampling methods may not be approved on EPA's list. But the beauty of Save the Bay collaborating is that we don't need to report to EPA necessarily. And so we want to identify experts that can help us identify the best ways to test. But finding different DNA markers or other ways to determine whether or not it's geese, whether or not it's agricultural, whether or not it's human is on our list of things to explore. Thanks. That's a great question.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on the impact of bike path bridge closures. This was Councilor Breyer wanted to raise this.
Yeah, I wanted to both understand kind of what's being done in advance, and then also see if there's anything legislatively that we can either do or push the state to do to help mitigate the impact that not just Barrington residents will face, but that users of the bike path traveling through Barrington will experience.
Yeah. We met with DOT, and they gave us a pretty detailed brief of where they're putting up their detour signs and their routing. We have Alan Corby and Chief DiCrescenzo and myself going out next week, and we're going to walk it to just trying to get a better idea or feel for it. And DOT has said any recommendations that they'd be willing to consider. One recommendation that the town of Warren made was to, on the bridges, to put up a fence so that if two bikers were to come in contact with each other, they're supposed to be walking, but the concern is that if they were to come in contact, someone could go over the guardrail into the road. I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a guardrail there. Most of our sidewalks don't even have that, and we don't worry about people falling in the road. Well, we do, but it doesn't happen very often, so I'm not sure that's a wise expenditure. But if DOT is willing to do that, then it makes it safer for everyone, except the fishermen who won't be able to.
You make a narrow pathway narrower.
Yeah, exactly. They put it on the inside of the guardrail. But it appears that they've been thoughtful in how they're trying to lash this up as best they can. Our suspicion is that between the two bridges, the bike path is open, but if they're coming across one bridge, they're going to stay on the sidewalk all the way down to the next bridge on County Road. And so making sure that that's clear. Although if you were with small children, there's going to be an access up to the bike path on the sidewalk that will allow them to rejoin the bike path for the short distance between the two bridges. But it's a work in progress. They've been cooperative. They've been forthright with what they're doing. At this point, it's going to be a design build. The bid should be going out within a month. They hope to award the bid over the winter months so that construction can start. And as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, they believe it's a 2-season project, hopefully not a 10-season project like the 2 bridge replacements were, but a 2-season project. So by the spring of 2022, we should have some new bridges going across. There is one concern that we did bring up, and that's at Police Cove. If you look at the maps, there's a peninsula that goes out just to the north of Police Cove that the bike path rides on before it has a short span of bridge. And one of the problems is because of that choke point there, when the tide's running, it's scouring the new 114 bridge supports. And one of their proposals was to push that, open up that choke point by removing a portion of that peninsula. The problem we have with that is if they did that, depending on how much they opened it up, it could render the new boat ramp and transient dock we're putting in, is that tide's running, you're not going to be able to launch a boat from that boat ramp. And it may take out some mooring space as well. We're not as concerned about that. We also have our harbor patrol boats down there, and that's where they dock. So having that buffer against the tide is important to us, and they seemed amenable to planning it into that. We will see when the final plan comes out. Another recommendation is, and Senator Whitehouse has been very big on the composite industry, and Warren is putting in a pedestrian bridge, I'm not sure where in town, that's going to use composite materials. And that's been recommended that DOT look into that with their bids, and if that were to happen, that could greatly accelerate the process. So that's where we stand right now.
One of the things you had mentioned was a concern that I had when speaking with some folks, and that's about the fishermen. And so I had wondered if it's possible to restrict fishing to the southern side of the bridge so that the side people will be traveling on in two directions much more frequently than the past is free of fishing lines, fishing hooks,
The fishermen will always fish on the side that's going to push their line away from the bridge. And I think enforcement of that might be extremely difficult. People use that bridge all the time with fishermen there. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. But once again, enforcement would become difficult.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I actually went down the bike path in the bridges this weekend. One thing that I saw a near incident with a car was coming off of the Barrington River Bridge onto New Meadow. Everyone seems to be trying to make that turn on the sidewalk there. And there's not much separating them from traffic, and they don't see the bikers coming the other way. So you have bikers coming down New Meadow to get towards the bridge, people coming off the bridge. They nearly crashed, and at the same time you have all the traffic backed up there. So I don't know if there's a way maybe to put some kind of plastic bollards or something to keep them out of the road, and just, you know, like you said, people should be walking their bikes so we don't have two bikes collide, but even worse would be a bike in a car. And the other thing is the crosswalk sign that was at the New Meadow crossing. Potentially move that down to the intersection, because that's now where people are naturally going to want to cross the road, whether they go, like you said, down County Road to the next bridge, or whether they get onto the bike path. They're still going to cross at that intersection.
Okay.
I'd also just like to have some community education on it, especially to the Hampton Meadows School and the middle school. There's a ton of kids who ride their bikes, and a lot of them come from Alfred Drown area. They're riding the entire way on those bridges. So just kind of educating those kids to make sure that they're understanding that they've got to walk their bikes over the bridge and kind of respect this, you know, the process.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mike Masori, but one of the ways to deal with that might be to deal with it with the Barrington Police Department in the
like
schools with the SRO,
Yeah.
getting some stuff out to them. So I'll talk to the chief about that and talk to Mike Masori about allowing us access.
I just wanted to add a point onto what Joy just said. I went by the middle school, and I was astounded and very pleased by the number of bikes that are there. It looked like Amsterdam, which has the most bikes I've ever seen in my life. It was really cool to see.
It's amazing. I was at Police Cove one day during the morning bicycle commute, and the number of children coming up Mathewson and coming across County Road to head to the middle school, to Hampton Meadows in particular, was remarkable.
Yeah.
Anything else on this? Okay. Next item is to discuss and act on short-term rentals. This is one that we've tossed around a bit. We asked the Economic Development Committee to look into this. Their recommendation was not to make any changes. There are some folks who are very concerned about this, and we asked the chief to look into this, and he did as much as he could, because it's hard to identify these rentals. They don't give addresses. Chief.
Yeah, there's a number of ways, obviously, in the software. It was very difficult, we found, over the last, we worked on it 4 or 5 weeks. But without having an address, it's difficult to search any statistical data. But we went on the sites HomeAway, VROB, Airbnb, and we found a total of 25, maybe, houses on those 3 sites. Those are the 3 most popular. And 25 rentals in Barrington. We tried to, some of the sites are pretty good with GPS mapping, along with some of the other properties. Obviously, we know that's been brought up recently, Leslie Ave. I, myself, being on 33 years, the only thing I think of short-term rental is the Lorraine Street Beach Mansion. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That used to be an issue one summer. We had major issues, a lot of calls. But looking at those addresses, we found 3 this past summer on Leslie Ave, I think we knew we were going to find a couple on loud noise. Our officers didn't find like any huge parties or anything. They were, to be honest with you, I think what happens is you have a different couple let's say you have a different group of people every weekend renting. They're on vacation I call it, which is a substantial difference. I think short-term rentals, my own opinion anyway, does change the dynamic of a neighborhood in that sense. I don't think you're going to see it in our statistics that, there's any major problem with the short-term rentals, but those houses down on Leslie are so close in proximity. If you have a couple that wants to, they're spending enough money for the weekend, they're going to say, I'm going to enjoy the water view, sit outside and talk. There's enough noise for that neighbor to call us. Our officers got out of the car, didn't hear anything, but when they got to the backyard, they found, people on 3 different occasions in the backyard talking and maybe having a few drinks. Not enough for an arrest or anything of the sort. And they went in when they were warned, but that's 1 or 2 in the morning, and I guess if your windows are open, that's going to be an issue. Which you're normally not going to get that every weekend in a house that's not a short-term rental. The Lorraine Street, we ran the last 4 or 5 years, didn't find anything other than a few on Leslie, like I said, this summer. Rhode, we've had some issues with the RISD property. I think that's more so because they cut down the parking, and now they've also invited guests to the beach, from what I understand. Residents. You don't have to be a RISD school or RISD grad or RISD college student to go on the property, so they have more people going and less parking. So we had some parking issues. We can't necessarily tie all that to a short-term rental. I do know we did have one call there this summer for an intoxicated person from a wedding, so we assumed they had a wedding on the property. I think the town manager did tell me that the building inspector is looking into that property. They may be using it against zoning laws. I'm not so sure on that. And like I said, it's just very difficult to ascertain. We looked at what you would normally think as a problem with those types of areas, right? Vandalisms or parking, loud noise, disorderly conducts. We searched all that over the last 5 years, and it's pretty steady in Barrington. But we have such a small amount, 21 to 25 short-term rentals that we know of on the sites, that I don't think you'd see a spike in our activity over a certain amount of years on those specific offenses. So it's difficult. But if anything, it has taught me that not knowing where they are, maybe, registration of the, not many requirements on them, but just registering, and for us to know where they are, and then in the future we could at least study when you do come up with a question as to is there any negative impact on the neighborhoods. We could search it a little better. But I don't know if you have any questions or if there's anything else I missed. I have a 2-page letter I sent to the town manager about what we did find, and that's essentially what we did find, not much of anything.
Okay. Any questions for Chief?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the thoroughness of your report, and especially your comments about changes the dynamic of a neighborhood, because I think that was the substance of the people who have brought complaints to me about a home in my area, but also the people who wrote us a letter. So I appreciate that being validated. And I know that we've pushed this around and we've discussed this over and over and over again, and I think it's time that we act according to the Chief's suggestion that at a minimum, an ordinance requiring the registration of the property location as a short-term rental is due. That would be my suggestion.
Don't they already, and my memory serves me correctly, they have to register because I think the state taxes them. So there is already some spot that they are getting.
I think that's only Airbnb. I don't think it applies to VRBO or Home Away. We are supposed to get 1% back.
Yeah, we're supposed to get
from Airbnb because that was some agreement that was made at the state level.
We don't get it directly. It comes from the state.
Correct.
Yeah, but that would be our only lodging, right? Do we get any lodging money?
We get very small, I forget, it was in my memo, I don't have it in front of me.
So
but
that
this-
would be from those properties. That's the only
Although it doesn't identify.
$3,000.
$3,000.
Yeah.
I don't think it would identify who it is. There's software, there's a company that will use some kind of artificial intelligence to compare the images on these sites to Google Maps and the Google Street View and that to identify exactly where it is, and they'll charge you for it. But I think those kinds of things, for us to try to find them, might be expensive. It might be worth finding out how much they charge. But do you think we should have them register?
Well, I think where our economic development group has said don't take any action, and I think the police chief has kind of done a thorough investigation, and it's really not come up with a huge problem. I mean, they kind of exist, and I do agree that it's challenging to neighborhoods in a way. But I tend to think, I'm hoping that that information's already captured somewhere. But
It doesn't seem as though that it is.
But if we're getting lodging money, it's captured somewhere.
But that's only Airbnb. It's not.
Do we know that to be sure?
I'm pretty sure.
I think Kate's right that Airbnb for everybody takes care of the tax issue. I think that some of the others, and I don't know which, just say the taxes are up to you. We'll provide the service of advertising your short-term rental, but the taxes are up to you.
I think VRBO, at least in my experience, when I go looking for a place on HomeAway, it shows up on VRBO, but not necessarily on Airbnb. They have different rules, I guess. So I
think in order to find out where they are, we would need to call for registration, so that if the goal is to find out where they are, I don't think there's a simple way around it. I think you just need to get folks to register. Then you'd be dealing with the issue of, how because there might be people who aren't.
I wonder if the solicitor can't look into what I really see as being the underlying problem, and I think you hit on it, Chief, which is there's no particular violation of law that's sticking out, but I can imagine living next door to the place saying, it's Tuesday night, and it was last Tuesday, and it was the Tuesday before that, and I have work tomorrow, and they're up till 11:30 drinking in the backyard, and maybe it doesn't violate our noise ordinance, but I shouldn't have to live like this. And I wonder, could the solicitor is there any solution anywhere that we're overlooking that would be not about short-term rentals, but about a generally applicable ordinance, some kind of nuisance property?
So, as far as existing ordinances, what we've looked at was some of these issues that have come up in your zoning ordinance. Even if there is a short-term rental, which isn't addressed now, a residential property can only be rented to a household, which is defined as a family related by blood or marriage, or no more than 3 unrelated persons. So I think the type of households that you were mentioning usually are a group of some unrelated persons that are kind of a party house idea. So I think if we could find a way to enforce that provision, which is difficult to enforce because there's not a good way of knowing whether or not it's being rented out by a family or by, 7 unrelated college students. But that provision of the zoning ordinance could help to reduce that problem. I think the registration requirement could get at that if you also collect the data about who you're renting to, as far as is it a family or is it more than 3 unrelated persons.
Is that in our zoning ordinance now? Doesn't that have constitutional problems elsewhere in terms of discrimination on familial status?
So it's actually from state law.
Okay.
And there's 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases on this. And I'm blanking on one of the names, but one is Moore versus the City of East Cleveland, and that was the case that said constitutionally you cannot have a household definition that restricts a household to the number of people related by blood and marriage. So if they're related, whether it's your second cousin or whatnot, and they want to live in the household, they can. There's a case that goes along with that about unrelated persons, and that actually defined a household as no more than 2 unrelated persons, and the court said that's constitutional. There's a case now that's challenging a Providence ordinance where they have a similar household provision, except they specifically targeted college students. It went to the Superior Court. The court upheld that provision against a constitutional challenge. That's gone to the Rhode Island Supreme Court now, probably decided this term. So at least as of now, no constitutional issues.
But I think maybe adding on to maybe what Steve is getting at is there something where even if it wasn't a short-term or long-term rental, if it's just the people who live there and it's their 100% a year home, but every Tuesday night they happen to at 11:30 like to socialize in the backyard and it becomes a nuisance. Treating that no differently than how you would treat a short-term rental, because ultimately it doesn't matter if they're lawfully there, it doesn't matter whether they're there in their home or a short-term rental to the person who's being kept up. If I'm being kept up at night by neighbors, I don't care whether, I just care how frequent it's happening. It doesn't matter to me whether it's the same people every week or different people every week, whether they're paying a fee to be there or paying their taxes to be there, they're keeping me up. And so I'm of the mindset that we shouldn't regulate the short-term rental any differently than we would regulate anybody who's causing that kind of disturbance to their neighbors. But at the same point, we'll never have the data around, is this a problem? Is it more frequent than others, if we don't have some way to track it, to find those homes? And if a registration is the only way to do it, a registration is not a regulation. And so...
Right. But I think it would be helpful if calls were being made to a specific location, that the police have a way to identify the owner of that property, to respond to repeat.
Yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt, and before I forget, when I was typing this letter, we actually had an inquiry from a person that was renting, and this is just Thursday night as I'm typing this to the town manager, and I called them immediately. Someone rented the beach house for this weekend, and it was for about 50 or 60 people that it's going to attend it down on Lorraine Street. Now, the beach house is between Lorraine Street and Talcott, which is resident parking only by permit, and you're going to have 60 people there. So you have to say to yourself, we don't know anything about this. As the chief, I don't know anything about, only because this person happened to check with somebody, and they're from out of state. They're all from the Boston area. They were celebrating a 60th birthday party. 20 to 30 people were staying overnight in the house. There is 14 bedrooms, but I guess my point is, suppose there was 200 people. We have no idea until we get the call at night, and that's the resident it's just kind of ironic that I was thinking about that in the back of my head when this came up, and then sure enough, here it comes again. The beach house was rented this past weekend, the 2nd and the 3rd, and there's 50 or 60 people in. We did get a call at midnight that night for loud noise, and we found 10 or 20 out in the street talking. They were leaving, but they were talking, and it disturbed the neighbors. And there's nowhere to park. They parked at the beach, on one side of the beach. They asked for a permit to use town property. I don't know if I'm clear, but I guess I'm trying to say, I mean, it'd be nice to know. I don't know what kind of regulations, but at least we know, well, we know about that house, so registration isn't going to change anything, but I know other towns have, if there's 2 bedrooms, you limit the amount of people that can be in a short-term rental. I don't know.
So it sounds like in order to kind of move further, we probably need more data. In order to get more data, we probably need to ask for registration. And if we create an ordinance for registration, do we need to create a fine system for people who don't register, or can we just make it registration voluntary? And I imagine that if you live next door to a short-term rental, you could call the town hall and say, are they registered? And if they're not, then you've identified one. So we could do that. I'm a little leery of I don't know what the administrative burden would be. If there are only 25 of them, I think there probably are more, but if there are only 25, it shouldn't be that much of a burden.
It shouldn't be much of a burden to collect those applications and keep a spreadsheet of known short-term rentals in town.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a motion that we ask the solicitor to draft an ordinance for registration only of short-term rentals. And if someone seconds that, then we can have discussion.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion on this?
Just one question, because it came up on the zoning ordinance that says no more than 3 unrelated. Have we ever had, to anyone's recollection, a violation that resulted in a citation there?
That was my question to Peter. Was the mansion, the beach mansion, is in violation? If they've got 14 rooms, I'm sure they're not all related.
But have we ever set out to enforce it?
So there's one matter pending now. I wouldn't say we've really enforced it. We kind of just sent a cordial letter saying, be aware that this is a requirement, so in the future you may want to consider this. They're thinking about whether to appeal that to the zoning board now.
Okay. And was that enforcement through the police or through the building inspector's office?
It goes through the building
Zoning
inspector's
official,
office.
right?
Yeah.
Can you just share what that rule is? Is it for renting a home, for being a household?
It's for any residential zone, any residential property. So any residential property in a residential zone, or even in a non-residential zone if it's non-conforming, it can only be occupied with one household per dwelling unit. And the definition of a household is a family or no more than 3 unrelated persons.
Okay, so 3 unrelated persons is okay.
Yes.
A 4th that's related to one of those 3, fine. A 4th that is not related to any of them, not okay.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Is it a time period or like that isn't addressed?
There's no time period requirement addressed in the zoning ordinance for as far as residential properties, and that kind of where it allows for this short-term rental without falling into the other transit use codes like the motel, hotel use, since there's no definition of that contained in the residential household definition. But it does have that limitation on relation and number.
That was my only question.
Okay. So motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. Next item is to discuss and act on resolutions. This is a resolution authorizing denial of license, permit issuance, or renewal based on unpaid taxes and assessments. How did this come about, Jim?
I believe there are 13 communities in the state that allow this to happen. It was brought up by the building inspector, the new building inspector, asking why we allowed people to get permits when they still owed us taxes. And in investigating it, it was determined that it requires enabling legislation. There are 13 communities in the state that currently have that enabling legislation. And so we thought it was a prudent step to try and, if someone owes us taxes, we shouldn't be issuing permits for them to, renovate or expand or do whatever until their tax bill's been paid.
Makes sense to me.
Would this apply, I guess in theory, to any and all permits or licenses? So, for example, and this is a rather ridiculous one, but like a dog license, for example, if somebody has back due taxes, they can't register their dog? I'm just curious.
As currently drafted, it would apply to any license or permit issued by the town.
I think the idea in general is fine. I'm a little concerned about the wording of the proposed legislation, only because it would prohibit us from issuing a license. And I think maybe the more, measured approach would be to say that we are authorized to deny the license. But if someone were to approach us and say, look, I have a tax arrearage, here's my payment plan, you're going to put me out of business. I think the smart decision is, hey, stick to your payment plan and we'll be fine. So I'm...
If we block the license, they can't earn the money to pay the taxes.
Right. But I think the idea of the enforcement mechanism being, the ability to deny the license is a good idea. So I'm trying to figure out how to change this without holding it up for a month. But
so at the, because I had the same thought. So second line, second word in the wording of the legislation, changing may to shall or can. So and required for the operation of a business shall be issued or renewed to any person. And then with adding D, upon approval of town council, a license can be issued to such a person or business that is in arrears.
I would think that you could put in if someone had a repayment plan, approved repayment plan, then you could issue a permit. And Kathy, how many of those do we have? Not many right now, right? It was in your report. There are 4. But if they have a repayment plan in place, then we ought to be able to issue them a permit.
So could you did you have changes for this?
only that I didn't prepare changes, so I'm kind of trying to do it on the fly, but I think something like adding a subsection D, a notwithstanding the foregoing kind of thing.
Yeah. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the town council has the authority to issue licenses or permits.
Well, I think to Jim's point, is there already an approval process in place for those payment plans? Did Kathy sign off on
the repayment plans?
So I think Jim's suggestion of if there is an approved payment plan, then it can be renewed. Mm-hmm. And then maybe also, if there is not an approved payment plan, somebody could have recourse with the council. Or not, I'd be fine with.
I mean, the default is if you don't have a payment plan, and you owe taxes, you need to get a payment plan.
Yeah.
Or pay your taxes to get a permit.
So I think that notwithstanding your subsection D could do it. Notwithstanding above, and you might say the council or its designee, because we may, say that under these circumstances we'll allow the manager to approve it or not. It just gives us the freedom to decide whether we want to delegate that authority.
You know, I know you people, like Councilman Breyer said something about what if it's a dog license? At one time, somebody questioned what if it was a marriage license? So you don't want to go down that road, do you?
So I think I have to correct what I previously said. It applies to 3 different types of licenses. It's any license or permit that's issued by the town that's required for the operation of a business. So that's one. And then any demolition permit or building permit. So it's only those types of licenses. So
What were the next?
Demolition permits and building
right.
permits.
Marriage licenses.
Yes, not a marriage license, not a fishing license.
I needed to get that out there because
Yeah.
we went through this once before with some things.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the dog doesn't get registered.
No, now the dog does.
For the payment plan.
Either way.
So we're looking for verbiage in a subparagraph D that will allow for a permit when there's a tax repayment plan in place.
The 4 tax payment plans that are in place, they're all current. It's just they're on a plan so that they can pay monthly. So it's not like they're delinquent. I think there was 30-some payment plans when I started, but we got them all caught up in it. They went on mostly ACH, but the people that are on the payment plans get Social Security, so they can't make the payments in time with their Social Security payment. But they pay monthly, and they're all up to date. We don't have any delinquents on payment plans.
Okay. I'm going to suggest as Councilman Boyajian is wordsmithing.
I'm trying. It's getting late.
Maybe
It's
we
late.
can go on to bids.
Or, yeah, if it's, General Assembly is still not going to be in session in December.
Yeah, can we table it? Because I'm sure there's a fine solution to this, but
Okay.
as I sit here, I'm struggling to make sense.
I can never remember this, Peter. Do we have to make a motion to table it?
Probably wouldn't hurt to. I move to table it.
Yeah, I think it'd be better to table it and have
Okay, it's been a
date
motion
set.
made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Matter is tabled. We'll bring it up at our next council meeting. Next item is to discuss and act on bids for the Bay team. Denise had to be here at the beginning, and she stayed right through.
I'm Denise Howes, Director of the Barrington Prevention Coalition, known as the Bay Team. The contract approval request before you is for Stephen Island as Prevention Coordinator to manage the Partnership for Success grant. This contract would actually replace the one that you approved in April. That previous contract was voided due to grant deliverables not being met.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve is the language? I don't have the motion.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for a prevention coordinator to manage the 5-year PFS 2018 grant for the East Bay Regional Coalition to Stephen Island in the amount of $52,000.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is for the Department of Public Works. Buying a lot.
Yeah. First purchase is a $16,500 GVW utility truck and plow. We're recommending Gervais Ford out of Ayer, Mass. For $63,939, and that includes a trade-in value of $6,000.
So I always have a little trouble with this. This is net after the trade-in?
Correct. This is
okay.
net after trade-in value.
Okay.
What's GVW stand for?
Gross vehicle weight.
Yeah.
What is it?
Gross vehicle weight, the overall weight of the vehicle, loaded and everything, maximum weight.
They don't just say pounds.
That would be too easy.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for a 2020 16,500 GVW utility truck with plow from Gervais Ford of Ayer, Mass. for $63,939 with a trade-in valued at $6,000.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
The second one is a 41,000 GVW dump truck with a plow. It's also a sander, and we're recommending Coastal International Trucks out of Warwick, Rhode Island. And $161,947.69.
Wow.
How many do we have of those?
I would say seven of those trucks.
Okay.
These are the workhorses during snowstorms, blizzards. They're our sanders, so they treat the roads. They storm debris, like the storm we had 2 weeks ago. These are the trucks that are hauling all the debris to Walker Farm, the big brush piles, and so they're heavy-duty trucks.
This is, seeing that there's no trade-in on this, is this increasing our capacity, or is it replacing one that's not even a trade-in?
Right. We have one that the sander is no longer working. What we're thinking, because the seasons are now, everything's overlapping. We're now still chipping brush, but as you heard, there's a chance of snow coming. So I always run into the difficult task of having trucks prepped for a storm, because I can't load them with salt if I'm using them still for chipping brush, because the truck that chips brush has a wood box on it, so when the chipper shoots into the back of the truck, it's not blowing all over the streets. However, I can't plow with that truck or use it as a sander because the box is on it, and then I'd have to take the box off it. But the truck we have now, the sander's not working. The engine's still good, but the body's rotting away. But we think we can get maybe 2 more years out of it, and we might as well use it to
And it can
chip
keep
brush.
chipping while
Yeah,
we
the
get ready
trade-in
for
values
snow.
we were getting from all the bidders were very insignificant, so we figured we just keep it for a couple more years. And then this way, with the storms we're getting, we had another storm last week that was pretty bad, that we're still out chipping brush, and we'll be out chipping brush probably for another week. So it's advisable to keep it as a backup.
According to the Farmer's Almanac, this winter is going to be heavy snow. So I'm going to make a motion to award the bid for a 2020 41,000 GVW dump truck with plow for $161,947.69 from Coastal International Trucks, LLC of Warwick, Rhode Island.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next one is the brush chipper.
The third item is the brush chipper. Right now, this was to replace the brush chipper on our tree truck, our tree program. What I'm going to do, because the trade-in values were very insignificant, I'm going to keep the old chipper, which is a smaller chipper. This is an upgraded chipper. It can handle up to 19-inch diameter logs. The chipper we have now is only about 12 inches. I purchased that in 2005, so it's about 14 years old. That's another product that, the way we're chipping brush and what we're doing, it's advisable to have a backup. So we'll have now 3 chippers, but the third one will be just a backup as needed. So Bobcat met the specifications. We were looking at the Vermeer. That was the one we were going to go with, but Bobcat gave a price that's very low, and we think we can work with the Bobcat. So we're recommending Bobcat of Rhode Island. It's a $75,491, and there's no trade-in. So
Does that mean that the quality of the chips that are delivered for free, that we value and appreciate so much at the community garden, will be of better quality?
I don't know if I could say that. I think it's mostly what we chip is the issue, and if Frank, with the tree program, if he's chipping straight maple right now with the leaves down, usually it's a better product. It's when we stop mixing the leaves, bittersweet vines, it ends up being a more strandy type of a chip.
There's some pretty nasty branches that come through. Yeah, okay.
You need the nice trees to fall.
Yeah, right. I'll make a motion to award the bid for a new trailer-mounted brush chipper from Bobcat of Rhode Island in the amount of $75,491.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The fourth item is it'll be funded out of our sewer operating budget, a sewer enterprise account, I should say. It's a portable generator. Unfortunately, we only had one bidder that was interested. ATS, who we worked with at developing the specification, I think they were a little scared off by the wiring. Currently, we have 15 sewer pump stations and 3 stormwater pump stations. The 15 pump stations that handle the sewage in town, 6 of those have built-in generators with underground storage tanks. The other 9, so 2 weeks ago when we had the power outage, we had guys working, our sewer division's 4 people, round the clock, bringing 2 generators that we have to the 9 pump stations and pumping them down all night long. This will allow us at least to provide one more generator that we could station a generator at the end of Rumstick and another generator at the end of Adams Point, and then use the 3rd generator, portable generator, to handle the other 7 sewer stations. So it would help a lot. We did ask for this. All these items are in the capital budget that we asked for with the planning board. So this is an item that we're asking for with Southworth, Milton. They meet the specifications. It's custom wired. This is a large generator. This is something that's the size of a vehicle. And we have, like I said, we already have 2 of them. This will be our 3rd. And it's the price of $61,350. It's all the wiring, and it's ready to go. It's all set up for our pump stations.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for a portable generator from Southworth Milton Incorporated, Milford, Mass. in the amount of $61,350.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, we've got police, 1 police vehicle, 2 police vehicles, now 1 in the equipment.
It's always nice to follow the Public Works for those expenses. All right, I'm here tonight only because, as you know, we ordered a hybrid back in February 4th or 5th, 2019. So Lieutenant Igo's here tonight, and he spoke with the dealership. They can't even guarantee us getting the vehicle this calendar year. And we came upon 2 reasons. We came upon a 2019 leftover. I remember, if you remember, I was here last month. You told me I could find another one, and Lieutenant Igo found another one from the same municipality. The city of Warwick could not fund their vehicle. They've had on hold now for 4 or 5 months. If anyone else knew, we'd probably be able to sell the thing for 4 times the money, because this is a statewide issue. There are no 2020s being delivered. I don't know what the problem is. We've never had this issue with Ford. The manager that Lieutenant Igo spoke with, you could tell he was frustrated as well. He was almost kind of relieved, kind of happy that we were backing out. He cleared us from our purchase order, because he wants to tell the company, I'm losing all these municipalities. They're all looking for other vehicles. So luckily we get the 2019 leftover from the city of Warwick that they were going to purchase from MHQ, and we're just looking to purchase that leftover, and maybe next fiscal, I mean, at this point, we probably would have seen the hybrid in next fiscal year, and we'll maybe attempt to buy a hybrid if the council is so interested in the, next fiscal year, because I think it is going to be a good thing. No, I really do. I mean, all the reading I've done, the hybrid is probably made for police work because of the idling. They'll idle down, save fuel. Other than that, performance is the same. So
That was the last gift that...
I'm looking forward to sharing with Chief LaCrosse.
I know where he lives. You can.
Yeah, thank
Chief
you.
DiCrescenzo canceled his hybrid order. I'm sure Chief LaCrosse will be very happy with that.
He may be happy.
But you mentioned that nobody's signing up for the 2020, but you did say last time that it, that it was, you could no longer transfer old equipment into the...
Right.
So that must, that the cost of that must discourage people from ordering.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, because the 2020, whether it's the hybrid or non-hybrid, the equipment will not transfer.
Okay.
So the only difference is still at $3,300, the difference between the base price of the hybrid, non-hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
But all the 2020 police SUV Explorers will not take the equipment from the older. That's going to happen no matter what. So we had that hybrid order, and we have two 2020s on order. So this will alleviate one of them. So we'll have one more vehicle that we don't have to transfer, that will take the transfer.
I'm glad
So
that
the
that
hybrid is
works
still
out.
on order?
No, we canceled it.
You canceled
for
that
this.
one,
Yeah.
okay.
Now we have two 2020s that were not hybrids.
Okay.
That the council approved in July or August of this year.
Hybrid next year.
Okay.
For the this fiscal year. These two are from the last fiscal year that will happen to be replaced.
Which is a savings for us.
Yeah.
Right.
With regret, I will make a motion to award the bid for a 2019 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor SUV vehicle with equipment transfer in the amount of $38,104.30.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next one?
And the next one, we ordered, like I just had said, in August of this year, July or August, for the new fiscal year, two 2020 Police Explorer SUVs. And we had 3 bids because of the new equipment and the transition of that, all the new equipment and install. We usually get bids because we know it's going to go over the $9,000, mark for bids. And 3 companies bid, and the lowest bid was the $93.96. That's for all the equipment and the transfer and installation of that equipment on the 2020s when they do come in. They're not here yet, but we had the bids, so I wanted to get it approved, so when they do come in, that'll come out of the capital.
So but that only works for one?
Is that for one of the 2020s or for both of them?
It's for one because the other one, if you remember, is going into unmarked.
Oh, okay.
We have one now with 9,000 or 10,000 miles that's unmarked, but it has a spotlight. It's actually a patrol vehicle. That'll go into patrol. And that one of the 2020s, we don't need the conversion.
Okay.
Just one of the 2020s will need the full equipment and full installation at this cost, whenever that arrives.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the purchase and installation of equipment for a 2020 Ford SUV utility police interceptor to Adamson Industries Corporation in the amount of $9,396.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is from our planning department, and this is for sidewalks.
This project would complete a section of sidewalk on Solms Road, which is a state road, between Zampa and Crossways. This would complete the 1,000-foot stretch of sidewalk that the planning board required as an off-site improvement related to Palmer Point to provide a safe walking facility from Palmer Point, Coach Murgo Lane south to Crossways, which is a side street that connects you over to the sidewalks on New Meadow, and eventually to County Road where there's a bus route. And that was in response to a lot of comment during the public hearings about Palmer Point, about the lack of access to public transit and things like that. So that was required, and the 300-foot section that we're talking about was taken out of the requirements specifically to be built by Palmer Point because of the additional cost of curbing, which significantly increases that construction piece. So that they paid a fee in lieu for that section, and the town would have to, unfortunately, bid it out and at the prevailing wages. And so that's where we are now. Palmer Point itself should be building the rest of the 700 feet pretty soon. I couldn't get a firm date, but they say pretty soon.
Okay, so this won't be right in front of Palmer Point yet. The part that you're putting in is
this is actually probably, again, this would be the completion of the section that gets you all the way to Crossways. Getting to Zampa doesn't get you that cross street that gets you to New Meadow. So it's a safe route from Palmer Point to Crossways, which also benefits the surrounding neighborhoods as well. Because there's a lot of walkers and bicyclists, dog walkers, as Mr. Steve knows, on Selms Road. Not the best lit street and higher traffic speeds and things like that. So there's a benefit not only to Palmer Point residents but also the neighborhood. The two bids that came in were one was from D'Ambra Construction of Coventry, $73,045. Narragansett Improvement Company of Providence was at almost the same, a little bit higher, $74,371. It's a little bit higher than Par Engineering's costs. I didn't put it in a memo, but their estimate was maybe about $12,000 less than that. But they weren't fully confident that estimate was accurate because it's such a small section of. It's unpredictable, but we think it's within an acceptable range.
Okay.
I was curious about the payment in lieu of constructing. It has been my understanding that the planning board determines whether they would have the developer put in the sidewalk or make the payment. And the portion of the sidewalk that's far more expensive for the town to put in is the portion that they were able to pay the payment in lieu of rather than build. Does the payment increase depending on which portions of sidewalk there?
It had been a negotiation. This was based on an engineer's estimate of what the on the private side, not the public side, would pay for a sidewalk less, not including curbing, based on linear feet. And that's what their fee was, which didn't amount to anything close to this amount. And so cobbling together all the payments made over time, we almost made the math work perfectly, but we're about $6,000 some short. So that would have to come out of the streets and sidewalks bond.
Okay. I'll make a motion to award the bid for construction of sidewalk on Soames Ave between Coach Murgo Lane and Crossways to D'Ambra Construction in the amount of $73,045.
It's Soames Road.
Yeah.
I heard you pause and I looked and I said, oh, yeah, right. Soames Road. But I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
That was with the contingency, the 10% contingency. Usually it's a 10% contingency on top of that, just to have a little extra. Was it clear?
It's not, sorry, that was not in the...
Was not included in the motion, so...
Yeah.
I will make a motion to award the bid for construction of sidewalk on Soames Road between Coach Murgo Lane and Crossways to D'Amber Construction in the amount of $73,045 with a contingency
Of 10%.
of 10%, with an additional 10% contingency.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thanks. Next one is discuss and act on ordinances. The first one is just an introduction. This is, we had a resident come before us last week about folks blocking her driveway as they're dropping their kids off, and we have addressed that.
I'm Nancy Gregg O'Brien, and I live at 9 Vermont, and my neighbor came to the last meeting. First, I'd just like to appreciate you for considering this, because it doesn't affect a lot of people, but the little group of us that it affects a lot. And I know that she showed you photos, but I just want to show you an update of a picture I took last week of a parent waiting while her child got picked up from school. And I said to her, "Gee, I have to get to school myself." And she goes, "A bus will be up here any minute, don't worry."
Oh, yeah.
Now, that's where the kids would come through when they come the back way into the school property, too, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
It comes right back into the new baseball field that they're putting in.
Was the tennis courts? Yeah, right. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
I really do appreciate you considering this. Besides dealing with, besides the issues of us trying to get out of our driveways, it's also the safety of the kids, because they go zooming through on skateboards and scooters and bikes, and when there's cars parked there, it's just more difficult for them. And then when there's snow.
So I think that the way that it's been drafted, we looked at it originally, said just parking, and so I think we modified it to say standing, because you could have a lot of folks there, and then they'd say, "Oh, I'm not parked."
Actually, she had the car. She wasn't in the car, but she was a grandmother type. Excuse that generalization, but the car was running, and she was standing with her grandchild, and she just kept saying, "Oh, the bus will be here any minute." And I kept saying, "Okay, well, I don't have to punch a clock at school, but still, I would have liked to be able to get out of my driveway a little easier." Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, we appreciate your sitting here until 11:15. I'll make a motion to introduce 2019-25, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 179, Article 4, parking, and to schedule a public hearing for Monday, December 2nd, 2019.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next one is a public hearing. I'm opening the public hearing.
Mike, do you have anything to say?
Public here, unless Mike has something or Chief has something to say. This is the ordinance reducing the number of BVL licenses. Anyone on the council want to say anything?
I was just trying to figure out what it was, because I didn't think anywhere went out of business. Is this the Black Pear decided not to get the... Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out earlier.
We'll make a motion to adopt 2019-24, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 63, alcoholic beverages, reducing BVL licenses as presented.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is to discuss the agenda for the Town Council Strategic Offsite. I think Jim has put in some thoughts.
Oh, boy.
And Councilor Breyer has also mentioned that he had some thoughts on this. Oh, it's not in there. I guess we didn't. So did you have some suggestions?
Yeah, so there, Three things that I'd like to be able to cover, and one is looking at communication, large picture communication. How does the council communicate and how does the town communicate, both within and amongst itself, but then also out to the community?
Okay.
Both in terms of form and function. And then starting to do a big picture look at budget review, because it's kind of, we're already coming back up to budget. I know last year, I don't know what happens before what I know of what happened last year, because I was new to the council at that time, but for me, it all came very quickly and moved very quickly, and I don't know if that's how it always happens, but if we can kind of look and set some kind of
expectations
yeah.
about that, right?
I'd just like to say something at this point, and that is that unlike at the state level, where the reps actually create the budget that is moved to the Committee on Appropriations is the town manager's budget. It's not the town council's budget, although we approve it. It is the manager's budget that goes to appropriations. So in the past, while we have gone over the items after the manager has put together the budget, we do not, sorry to use this term, micromanage how each department is
Right. Right, but talking about if we want to put more resources toward different initiatives, that's going to cost money in a future budget. And if we're presented with a budget that's, let's say we thought we need more snowplows and we need more people on snowplows, and that's a direction we want the town to head, we would say, okay, we should probably be looking at an increased DPW budget to hire people and to buy trucks. But if the manager puts together a budget and was thinking we need more programs for youth sports, and so is going to be doing more hiring or emphasis in the rec department, having that budget discussion in late January or February when a budget's already created doesn't make a lot of sense. It's an opportunity to get on the same page in terms of where we think future investments should be made. So I'm not talking about line items on the budget. I'm talking about large view picture things.
Except that I'm not sure that it is
It's this discussion that we can have.
Okay.
We're not
All
going
right.
to get
Yeah.
into
All right.
we won't get into the,
Okay.
even at that meeting, we won't get into, this is what I would like to see in the budget. It's more, I think, a question at that stage is, as Councilor Breyer said, a big picture, what should we be doing, what's the appropriate role, and so forth.
But those recommendations for those changes for, say, DPW should come from DPW, not from us.
Yeah.
But I think our little working day is a perfect spot for this conversation.
So you said 3, and
Yeah. The other is meeting preparation in terms of, and I guess it pairs to communication, but in terms of the systems in place for how we arrive at this meeting or at our council meetings with the information that we have and when and how we get it.
okay. Anyone else for the offsite?
Can we talk about any initiatives that we might be interested in proposing?
Sure.
I would also appreciate, when I first was elected, I think I've said this before, that I think it was out of Grossmart, but it was, and I believe it was Andy Tights who detailed what the responsibilities were for, at that point it was all the land use boards, but that included the town council. And it was there that I found, that I learned, which boards were what board was the head honcho, which was pretty much planning, but that one of our most important responsibilities is appointments to town boards. And I just think it might be helpful to have the solicitor detail what actually our role is as a town council.
Okay, all the council responsibilities.
Yeah, that's...
I'd love a discussion on economic development.
I'm sorry, Joy, I didn't hear that.
Economic development.
Okay.
I shoot you an email?
Yes. Yes, he's going to shoot me an email. And anybody who comes up with anything, you can do that as well. In the interest of time, I'm going to suggest that anyone who has anything they want on the agenda, shoot me an email for the December 2nd one. These are sort of generally what's going to be on there, but or could be on there. If you want something specifically on, please let me know and we'll get it on there. But I would like to try and get through.
Excuse me. We talked about this at our staff meeting about our December 2nd meeting because Thanksgiving falls when we usually post the agenda. So I'm trying to get everything earlier. If we look at the calendar.
It's way earlier.
So we lose 2 days of prep before the next council meeting, so we have to accelerate everything as far as when we meet on the agenda and when our expectations are getting materials in. And that goes back to Jacob's comments about having a discussion about meeting preps. And, we often get late requirements. Mary and I are shuffling around the week before the council trying to get all our ducks in a row and things lined up. And, it may be that we make a decision that, listen, after a certain, a week and a half out or a week out, we're not adding anything else to the agenda because we want to get the stuff out to you as soon as we can. And it'll just have to wait till the next month. Right now, we're more in a reactionary mode and trying to get everything we can that's out there. But we may just leave some hanging fruit there for the next meeting.
With town hall closed on the Friday, does that mean that the agenda has to go to the Secretary of State on the Tuesday?
No, because the Monday is the meeting, so it's going on. It really gets posted on Thursday. But
that's Thanksgiving, so it's Wednesday.
So, and then I've got people that are taking vacation, so I've got to work with the staff, so we're hoping to...
It has to be posted by Tuesday, close of business, because you need 2 working days, so that'd be Wednesday and Monday.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that a shorter agenda would be appreciated. Is that right? Well, that's a message I'm getting.
It's really not, it's not the short agenda. It's when people want certain topics on the agenda, and then if there's attachments, like our department heads have to give their memos. So we're working with, Jim and I are working, trying to put the agenda together, but now, you know, they realized, oh, a bid came in, let's get it on right now, but they've got to write their memo, and I've got to get it up and on clerk base, and, you know, somebody wants a copy of it. I just can't do it because it's still being drafted. So.
How the sausage is made.
So if you want some, if anybody of these items that are on here, if you really want something on, let me know, because we may, we've already, we'll be introducing, that's nothing that happens quickly in ordinance.
Some of these things.
Some of these,
could be a real, that might.
I may push these to our January meeting just to cut these down a little bit. Certain ones, I think it's too much of a pain to move the public hearing on the ordinance, but that takes about 30 seconds, so.
Or is that part of your, some of these, is that part of your strategic November 18th meeting?
We might be able to, no, we can't, because we've already scheduled a public hearing. So we made a motion to schedule a public hearing, so.
Yes, but like some of the...
Introduction?
No, the conversation, like Mr. Breyer would like certain things, so like budget reviews, isn't that going to be discussed at?
Yes, I guess I'm just
November
talking
18th,
about,
yes.
I'm talking about the practicality of December 2 and trying to get that to be a smaller agenda for that particular month.
Yes, that has to be done.
Yeah, so I'm just suggesting anybody wants something they think is important, let me know, because I may be pushing things to...
And as a reminder, there's a Spencer Trust meeting at 6:30 that day as well for the Spencer Trust budget.
Yeah.
Like your was it your resolution about the new, you tabled it this evening, the resolution about the unpaid taxes? You tabled that, so do you want that, like that should go?
The legislation.
For December 2nd.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. We'll put that on December 2nd.
Right.
That you can get through, I think, quickly.
It isn't so much the things that we've already got in queue that don't have a lot of work to be done, because they're going to be prepared. We're not worried about the length of the December 2nd meeting as much as being able to prepare ourselves for it. Yeah. So I think it's the things that coming in at the last minute that we're going to say, no, we're pushing it off to January.
Yeah. It's not a question of how long we'll be there. I'm just trying to limit the work that Mary's office has to go through when they're going to be short-staffed.
Mary's not serving Thanksgiving dinner until 4 in the afternoon, so she has most of the morning to work on it.
Good. Okay. Do I hear a motion to move into an executive session in accordance with 42465A2, litigation, potential litigation and contract continuation, 42465A5, acquisition of property, 42465A2, collective bargaining, dispatch local 555, memorandum of agreement, and to discuss the executive session minutes from October 7 and 17, 2019 for placement on the Town Council agenda for December 2nd, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're in executive session.